ask you for your birth certificate or where you were born or your green card. That's what it means. It does not prevent the officer from stopping you for any type of crime, arresting you, and then following that, contacting Immigration Customs Enforcement if need be, and have something taken. People are arrested, 40-some thousand people, or 140-some thousand. Well, the numbers are staggering in Los Angeles annually. Many people are turned over to ICE, and many times they come back. But we have the Deputy Chief who's here, who's sitting in the audience, who's willing to come up and comment on this. So I think we should hear it from the representative from the Los Angeles Police Department, our newest Deputy Chief. If you'll come forward from the police perspective and to dispel the myth that Special Number 40 is something evil that ties the hands of police when it comes to them doing their jobs to protect people of Los Angeles.
Good morning. My name is Sergio Diaz. I'm a Deputy Chief of the Los Angeles Police Department, the Commanding Officer of Operations Central Bureau. I've been designated by the Department and the City Attorney as the person most knowledgeable about Special Order 40. And I agree with the comments made by Councilman Zine and Councilman Weiss. In fact, Special Order 40 is a policy adopted by the Los Angeles Police Department in 1979. And essentially it does two things. One is it's a general prohibition of our officers, or against our officers, initiating an investigation with the sole purpose of discovering a person's immigration status. The second thing that Special Order 40 does, and by the way, a special order is a way that we have of changing our policy manual. The second thing that the special order did was to prohibit officers from arresting persons for illegal entry into the country, which is in fact a federal misdemeanor. It is true that we consider that Special Order 40 is very effective in increasing the amount of cooperation and public trust of all our communities, but specifically the immigrant community, specifically minority communities.
And joining us now is District 3 Councilmember Dennis Zine. Mr. Zine, thanks for joining us on Council Week in Review.
Pleasure being with you, Jack.
Before we talk about the impact of the federal legislation that's proposed, first tell us about Special Order 40. What does it do? And just as important, what does it not do?
Well, Special Order Number 40, Los Angeles Police Department, it's decades old. It prevents Los Angeles police officers from inquiring about an individual's status in the United States. In other words, an officer is not permitted to approach an individual and ask for their birth certificate or their place of birth. It simply prevents police officers from inquiring about what is federal immigration law. That's what it does. What it does not do is harass the public. It does not turn the police officers into immigration enforcement officers.
During the discussion on the council floor, of course, we heard a bunch of acronyms: INS, ICE, ICE. Most people have heard of the Immigration and Naturalization Service. What is ICE in that context now?
ICE is Immigration Customs Enforcement, ICE. With Department of Homeland Security, they have a number of different departments that have been established under the umbrella of Homeland Security, and ICE is referred to as Immigration Customs Enforcement.
How does Special Order 40 make us safer, and how long has it been in place, by the way?
Well, it's been in place for many years, decades. It makes us safer in that people who become victims of crime don't have to worry about the local police, the LAPD, enforcing immigration laws. If someone's a victim of a robbery or any type of crime, they need to feel free to report that crime to the Los Angeles Police Department for investigation so the officers can arrest the individual that's perpetrated that particular crime. What Special Number 40 is misconceived by a lot of people. People think that the LAPD is prevented from enforcing the law, prevented from enforcing the penal code or the vehicle code. Simply, it means you're not going to be an immigration enforcement officer, a branch of the federal government. But what it does is permit individuals who are victims of crime, no matter where they're born, to report those crimes and for the LAPD to investigate.
Are there any other misconceptions the public might have about Special Order 40 and police involvement in immigration issues?
Well, there's a lot of misconceptions, and the other misconception is an individual who is in the country illegally, in the city of Los Angeles illegally, and commits a crime. That individual is not only prosecuted through our criminal justice system, but ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, is notified. And through that notification, oftentimes people are deported. So individuals who are members of gangs, narcotics trafficking, etc., we enforce the immigration law against those individuals who are here in this country, in this city illegally, who are involved in criminal activity, whether it's narcotics or gangs or anything else. So the misconception is that if you're here illegally, you're not going to get arrested, you're not going to get prosecuted, and you'll continue to commit the crime. Law enforcement has an extra opportunity, not only the criminal sections that we enforce, but also the deportation. And many times, criminal aliens, people who are illegally and commit crimes, are deported through the resources of the federal government. And that's a common standing practice that's been in place as long as Special Order 40 has been in place. So the misconception continues, and we're trying to clear that misconception and bring about reality.
I want to ask you a question about something that you touched on briefly a moment ago. Victims of crimes, witnesses to crimes, when they come forward, obviously they're going to be questioned. There'll be some investigation of the incidents they want to talk about. Are you saying that at no time during that interrogation would they be asked about, for example, their immigration status?
That's correct. Any victim or any witness will not be asked if they're here legal or illegal. Simply the elements of that particular crime, the investigation that our detectives will follow up. The only time the place of birth, the status in the United States, in the city of Los Angeles, becomes an issue is when an individual is a suspect accused of a crime. Any type of crime, misdemeanor, felony, high-grade crimes, they are then inquired. There's an inquiry, and if it's determined that they are here illegally, Immigration, Customs Enforcement, ICE is notified, and many times again, those individuals, the suspects, are deported.
Great, thanks for clearing that up. Now, if you would, tell us about the National League of Cities and the Immigration Task Force that, in fact, you lead for that group.
Yes, I was put in charge of the National League of Cities Immigration Task Force last year, and what we're trying to do is come up with a comprehensive plan for immigration enforcement in the United States. The National League of Cities has taken a position. By the way, National League of Cities represents large and small cities across America, everywhere from Los Angeles to New York, everything in between, taking a position that local police officers need to deal with local crimes, crimes that violate the penal code, the vehicle code, etc., that they're not immigration and custom enforcement officers. So the National League of Cities has taken a position that our local police have tremendous responsibilities. Most of them are understaffed, and we need to focus their attention on the crimes that take place. That's the NLC policy. And as far as the task force, we've come up with what we believe is a comprehensive approach: border protection, to reinforce the border, to have employer verification, and to take the 12+ million individuals who are declared illegal in the United States and bring them into a legal status, not through amnesty, but individuals who are here on a visa and the visa expired, individuals who started a profession, they were no longer in that profession, a student visa. There's a number of the 12+ million people who are declared illegal who actually entered this country legally, but they're now declared illegal because their status changed. So there's three components of it: fortify the border, the activity with the employer verification through the federal government, through an opportunity to make sure that individuals actually here legally, and then the third aspect. So we've got the three components to bring this about. So we're not going to just give amnesty and say, you're here, we're going to forget about it, you can remain here without any consequences. There will be consequences, and there will be a process to bring those people into compliance. Not citizens, but to bring them into compliance with the laws that we have here in the country.
When you say their status may have changed, it means somebody who may have come here, for example, on a student visa and it simply expired, but they didn't leave the country?
Exactly. Expired, or they didn't complete school, they dropped out of school, or someone who got married and then got divorced. There's a variety of factors that play into the situation where they're all in this big category of illegal. People want to think that they all snuck across the border, whether it be the border, Mexico, or the Canadian border, or any other border. And when we talk about immigration in the city of Los Angeles, with all the languages that we speak, we've got immigrants that come here from all over the world. And people from Ireland sometimes enter this country and the city illegally. So it's not just one particular group of individuals, it's all the groups. And we want to bring them into compliance for the benefit of citizenship if they wish to pursue that, but at least to have a documentation to know who we have in this country with homeland, environment, the security that we have to have. So there's a variety of factors that bring this in. So hopefully Congress, hopefully the President with his influence will bring this about. This has been lingering for a long, long time. We need to come to an end to fortify the border, employer verification, and then bring those folks that are out of compliance into compliance, not through amnesty, but through a legitimate process.
A moment ago you mentioned the National League of Cities policy, but do other cities in fact have a Special Order 40 or something similar? And if so, how's it working for them?
Many of them do have that. Many of them have that just out of necessity, since they don't have enough police officers. They have that. And let me just explain briefly Special Order 40. Every special order that the LAPD goes into the department manual. So it's a special order for that particular year, and then it becomes part of the policy within the police department. So they've tagged Special Number 40 with this rule on immigration, but it's clearly policy within the city of Los Angeles and other jurisdictions throughout the United States.
By the way, before I forget, this federal legislation that's been proposed, do you think it has any realistic chance of passing and becoming law?
I sure hope so. It's been a seesaw back and forth. I was at Washington, D.C., testified before Congress on the impact that we have in the city of Los Angeles and urging Congress to move forward with it. We hope that Congress will do it. It seems that when it passes the House of Representatives, then it doesn't go past the Senate, and then we know that our meetings with the White House representatives, congressional representatives from the U.S. Senate, everybody seems to want to make it happen, but unfortunately it's not happening. Hopefully, before too long, we will have a comprehensive package that we can deliver to the American people and bring this into compliance, which has been way too long. It's been lingering way too many years, and we need to come for the final solution, and that rests with our federal elected representatives.
Oh, and by the way, during the council session on Tuesday, some state legislation was also discussed, as you know, legislation to help in controlling our gang problem by increasing asset forfeiture against members. Will we be able to actually collect money from gang members who break the law?
Well, we know that many gang members are involved in illegal enterprise, narcotics, and other illegal activities, and hopefully that will hit them in the pocketbook, because we know many gangs thrive on the illegal activity, generate dollars. So this additional enforcement, this additional rules, regulations that we can enforce through the criminal justice system, hopefully will curtail a lot of the economy that they're in business for. We need to crush the gangs. The bottom line is gangs create terrorism. It's urban terrorism. We need to use all the resources that we can apply to bring them into compliance, and we just want people to live a comfortable, legal environment, whether you're a gang member or a good citizen, and those rules have to be enforced.
You also, of course, talked about a sentencing component. If this passes, how soon might we see our prosecutors employing tougher sentencing measures?
Hopefully as soon as it passes. We know that our governor is appropriating additional dollars. We know that the county of Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Police Department, they're all working to identify additional dollars to put into place not only prevention, but apprehension and prosecution. It's got to be a multi-pronged attack, but we keep breeding new and new gang members, and we see the consequences, more and more violence, more shootings, more victims. So it's a comprehensive package that we need to put together, and hopefully this legislation will help bring that about. We spend a lot of money on preventive programs, and most of them aren't worth a darn. They don't work. We're analyzing that now in the City Council. One of my colleagues, Tony Cardenas, is championing that cause to try and bring this into which programs work and fund those that don't work, abandon those, and put your money where the best buck is made, in the effective preventive programs and the effective enforcement programs.
Well, with your help, we'll be following it all here. District 3 Councilmember Dennis Zine, thanks for joining us on Council Week in Review.
Jack, it's always a pleasure being with you. And to our viewers, watch 35, all the news that is news, Channel 35.
After debate, the resolution to oppose federal legislation that would prohibit or preempt local ordinances was approved in a vote of 12 ayes and 1 no. LA City View is the government access cable channel for the City of Los Angeles, featuring live coverage of City Council meetings and programming about City Department services and events. Now, if you have suggestions or comments about any of the programs you see here on Channel 35, or would like to receive a free viewer guide, call our viewer hotline at 213-473-3978. And we invite you to address the Los Angeles City Council on any item on the council agenda, as well as during public comment. You may come downtown to City Hall or go to the Van Nuys City Hall and participate via video teleconferencing. And remember, you can watch all Los Angeles City Council meetings live in their entirety on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays beginning at 10 a.m. On Sundays, you can watch the replay of all the week's meetings, also beginning at 10 a.m. Well, that concludes our program for the week ending June 15th, 2007. On behalf of Ted Lynn and everyone here at Channel 35, I'm Jack Popejoy. Thank you for watching, and please join us for the next Council Week in Review.
The Department of Public Works maintains and operates many facets of the City of Los Angeles on all levels, from below it, on it, and above it. Below, the city has 6,500 miles of sewers and 1,200 miles of storm drains that connect to the largest waste treatment facilities in the country. On it, 7,300 miles of streets and alleys with about 200,000 potholes fixed and over 100 miles of streets resurfaced annually. From above, an urban forest of 680,000 street trees trimmed for beauty and healthy, clean air, as well as maintaining the 230,000 street lights that light our 24-hour city. The Department of Public Works helped design and build 32 new libraries since 1998, 76 recreation and park projects, and a national award-winning wastewater treatment plant. The Department of Public Works, striving to make the city of Los Angeles a home that future generations will cherish.
You're watching LA City View, Channel 35.
Labange, Weiss, and Zine. If we could ask other council members to please join us. Good morning, Los Angeles, and welcome to the City Council meeting for June 20th, 2007. We are here in the John Ferraro Council Chambers, room 340 of City Hall, where we meet every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. I want to welcome our viewers on Channel 35, LA City View, where we are broadcast live during each meeting, and we are rebroadcast in the evening as well. I'm Council President Eric Garcetti, and I am joined by my colleagues, Councilmember Tom Labange, Jack Weiss, and Dennis Zine. There are 4 members currently here of our 15. We need 10 members, or 2/3, to constitute a quorum and to begin business. So let me begin by please asking council members to join us. We have 3 council members who are excused today: Councilmember Alarcon, Councilmember Cardenas, and Councilmember Wesson. But Ms. Gruhl, if you will please join us. Ms. Hahn, if you will join us. Mr. Huizar, if you will please come down. Mr. Parks. Ms. Perry is excused until 11. Mr. Reyes, if you'll please make your way down. Mr. Reyes is here. Thank you. Mr. Rosendahl and Mr. Smith, if you will please join us as well. We will begin as soon as we have 10 members. As mentioned, we're broadcast live on Channel 35, but we are also available via the World Wide Web at lacity.org, where you can click on the links and catch live streaming webcasts of our council meetings. You can also pull down past council meeting items through video on demand feature, which we have recently added, ensuring that you can catch a council meeting after it has occurred or going back in time to visit any council actions. Lastly, you can listen via audio through your telephone by calling City Phone, which is a service of the city, to allow you to listen in on the City Council meetings or any of our committee hearings. And that number is 213-621-CITY. We also invite members of the public to give testimony on items that are under our jurisdiction. Those are available through our agendas, which are online and also at the city clerk's office, as well as here in council chambers. Through our agendas, you can look at items which have not yet had a public hearing. If they have not yet had a public hearing, we invite you to fill out a card in the back and give that to one of our sergeants at arms, and we'll make sure we hear from you on any of those items. Every item we'll hear from the public, either in council committee or here in full council. And lastly, if you want to testify on items that are not on the agenda, but nevertheless are under our jurisdiction, that's called general public comment, and feel free to fill out a card in the back and give that also to Sergeant at Arms as well. If you live closer to Van Nuys, we meet there the first Friday of the month, but we're also available through our council chambers in Van Nuys to hear your public testimony. And finally, we have council ambassadors in the back, local high school students and folks who are interning with us to be able to explain any of the ins and outs. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them or one of our sergeants at arms for assistance. Again, thank you to the council members who are here pursuant to council rules on time. Councilmember Labange, Councilmember Reyes, Councilmember Weiss, and Councilmember Zine. We are waiting 5 more members, specifically Councilmember Gruhl, if you will join us, Councilmember Hahn, if you will make your way down, Councilmember Huizar, if you will make your way to chambers, Councilmember Parks, Councilmember Rosendahl, and Councilmember Smith. We look forward to seeing you soon, and thank you to members of the public for your patience. Thank you to council members Labange, Reyes, Smith, Weiss, and Zine. We are now at 6 members. We need 4 more. Councilmember Rosendahl, thank you for being here. We need 3 more, specifically council members Parks, Huizar, Hahn, and Gruhl. If you will make your way down as soon as possible, thank you. Thank you again to the council members who are here pursuant to council rules on time. This is a final quorum call. We are one member short of a quorum. Thank you to council members Gruhl, Labange, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Weiss, and Zine for being here. We are expecting council member Hahn and council member Weezer and council member Parks. If you could please make your way down as soon as possible. Council member Hahn, council member Weezer, and council member Parks, we are waiting your presence here in City Council chambers to begin our meeting. If we do not achieve a quorum in the next few minutes, we will adjourn for lack of a quorum. Thank you. Thank you to Ms. Hahn for joining us. I think we've lost Mr. Weiss now. If Mr. Weiss can join us, Mr. Parks, Mr. Weezer. All right, we have a quorum. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Hold on one second. Technical difficulties. Let me call the roll. Alarcon, Cardenas, Gruhl, Hahn, Weezer, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Weiss, Wesson, Zine. We have 10 members present and a quorum. First order of business, please.
Approval of minutes.
Mr. Parks moves and Ms. Hahn seconds. If there's no objection, those will be unanimously approved. Next order of business, please.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Zine moves and Mr. Reyes seconds. Without objection, those will be approved. Next order of business.
Mr. President, would you like to go through public comments at this time?
Let's run through the agenda real quick, and then we'll come back for public comment. First items.
Items 1 through 16 are items noticed for public hearings. Items 1 through 11 are hearings for street lighting districts.
Okay, we do not have any cards on that, so we will open and close the public hearings for those items. Council members, any specials? We are items 1 through 16. That's items 1 through 16. Any specials? Going once. Mr.
Special, since I don't have any of mine pulled yet, and I'll derive from them. Sorry, Mr. President.
You want to wait on all of them, Mr. Labange?
Yeah, go to the next.
Okay, let's go to the next section, please. Item 17.
Next section is item 17 through 32 on the regular agenda, and item 56 on the continuation agenda are items for which public hearings have been held.
Okay, colleagues, let's hold 17 on the table. That's a commissioner appointment. Yes, Ms. Perry.
Item 22 special.
22 for Ms. Perry. Mr. Parks?
Ask that we have 18 special, and if we can hold 23 and 31 till we get the committee reports.
23 and 31 and 18 for Mr. Parks.
And also 20, if we can have 20 continued to the 27th.
Until the 27th of June?
Yes.
Okay. If there's no objection, item number 20 will be continued to the 27th of this month, June. Okay. Any other specials? Ms. Hahn? I'm sorry?
32.
22?
32.
32, sorry. 32 for Ms. Hahn. Any other specials, colleagues? Let's hold the ordinance. 31 we have called special for Mr. Parks right now.
We want 31 continued till Friday by the councilman of the district. Is that okay? That's the Children's Museum?
Is there any objection to continuing that till Friday, sir?
No objection from Mr. Parks. 31 continued to Friday.
All right, that'll be continued till Friday, item number 31.
Thank you, Mr. Parks.
Any other specials? Mr. Zine, do you have a special?
The next one.
Oh, the next set, okay. 26 we'll call special for Mr. Weezer. And any other, if no other specials, let's again hold 19 on the desk as an ordinance, see if we can get 12 members here. On the balance, let's go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please. 16?
Is okay. I
Okay.
read my notes.
Let's take up 1 through 16 then. That's the biggest block ever called special. Congratulations. That's good. Mr. Holden, I think, used to call all prime numbers special, but that was different. Okay, let's go ahead and open the roll on 1 through 16. close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 eyes.
Those are approved.
God bless Nate Holden.
God bless Nate Holden. He's still here. Don't worry. Next items, please.
Next are items number 33 through 51 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, we'll hold 33 through 40 special for 12 members. Mr. Zine?
54.
46 and 54. We're not quite at 54, but I will keep that in mind when we get there for Mr. Zine. Ms. Hahn, and then Mr.
42.
Labange. 42 for Ms. Hahn. Mr. Labange?
50, please.
50. Let's go ahead and include all the items. We now have 12 members, so we can take up 33 through 40 as well. Any other specials? We have 42, 46, and 50. All the rest we can vote on. Let's go ahead then and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 eyes.
Those are approved. Next items, please. Oh, yeah, Mr. Parks?
Let me just ask, 47, if we just refer that to committee, because we had a hearing on that on Monday.
We'll go ahead and reconsider item 47, please.
And if you could also reconsider 48, so we can call that special, Mr. President.
48, okay. Go ahead, let's open the roll and reconsidering 47, 48. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 eyes.
Without objection, 47 is for Budget and Finance, Mr. Parks? Okay. With no objection, we'll send that to Budget and Finance. And 48 we'll call special for Mr. Weiss. Mr. Labange?
Yeah, this is item 56. Did we get there yet?
Not quite yet. We're almost there. Next two items.
Next two items are 52, 53, and they are closed session items. Would you like to hold that on the desk?
Let's hold the closed session items on the desk. If we can, it's now past 10:15. If we can recess this for a moment and call the roll for this special meeting.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Gruel, Hahn, Weezer, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Weiss, Wesson, Zine, Garcetti. 12 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
All right. Anybody wishing to call special 54 or 55? 54 was Mr. Zine. That's correct. And we'll hold 55 as a closed session item for the closed session. And let's go ahead and continue that into the regular agenda, regular meeting, excuse me. And that leaves us with one more item, I believe. Is that right? Item 56?
56.
And Mr. All right. Is anybody here from Rec and Parks for 56? Do we have anybody here?
Can I continue it again?
We can continue it again, or we can put a phone call in and see if we can get somebody down.
Continue it to next week.
Okay. Without objection, we'll continue item 56 1 week to the 27th. Okay. Thank you. All right. We'll come back now to public comment. And I'd like to call forward first Arnold Sachs will be our first speaker for public comment here in council chambers. After that will be Chuck Tenon, and then we'll go out to Van Nuys for Sharon Brewer. Good morning, Mr. Sachs.
Good morning, council members. Thank you very much. Again, not to reiterate the point, but I'm going to anyway. MTA and their construction authorities. I've been up in front of you several weeks in a row talking about this item. And last week, I believe, Mr. President, you explained that the construction authorities are part of a I'm having brain cramp right now. Because it's more than one community. The rail lines run through more than one community. So my question to the council members then is, with the Expo Line Construction Authority being formed by the state, why is there no Culver City Construction Authority, as that's a community outside the boundaries of L.A.? And again, with the Green Line extension to the airport, since that all falls within L.A., the city of L.A., why is a construction authority necessary? The MTA is having their budgetary hearings next week, I believe, and some of these questions should be addressed because they're raising the rates. They've already voted on that, and they claim they don't have the revenue to run their operations. And my claim is that nobody knows where the revenue is being spent on. I think this is important for your constituents to hear, and I think it's important for you to step up to the plate to voice your constituents' concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs, and appreciate those questions. I know my deputy, Jane Berner, my transportation deputy, spent some time with you explaining those authorities, and she's available for any other further questions you have if we can be helpful. Our next speaker is Chuck Tenon.
Good morning, council members, President Garcetti, Chuck Tenon. Recently, after 30 years, I was forced out of my home at 11927 Magnolia Boulevard, number 3 in Valley Village, CD2, due to demolition of about 8 buildings, which I found out now that the demolition in our building has been postponed for months, and people have moved into the building to watch it. As a senior, disabled, and low income, the stress has affected my health significantly. After 40 years, you can't know what it feels like. Recently, I applied to the LAHD for first-time homebuyer purchase assistance program because I found a place to make a new home. I qualified for this program for affordable housing. They ran out of money. In April, they were given $6 million, and in May, it was all gone, and many people like me won't get a new place to live. There's 112 people on the waiting list there that are not going to get it because they have no money. I'm here today because of motion 07-1887 for $3 million to the LAHD to help myself and 112 others on a waiting list and other people trying to get affordable housing. I know this city and the city council care about people who need affordable housing. Thanks to Councilman Herb Wesson and Tony Cardenas, they introduced this motion to keep this program alive. I urge you to vote for this today so people can get into affordable housing that don't have it and this program doesn't die. So put your heart where your vote is in affordable housing. I know you people care, and you care about a lot of people that need it. This program needs to go on. They need that money there because they don't have it, and a lot of people are being hurt by that. If the program is to help affordable housing and help people like myself, then where did $6 million go in 1 month? Now there's an opportunity. They can help all these people on this waiting list, like myself, get something. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tenon. Next, we'll go to Van Nuys, and we will hear from Sharon Brewer. Good morning, Ms. Brewer.
Good morning. Sharon Brewer. This is about the Encino Neighborhood Council election, June 28, 2007, now only 8 days away. As of this morning, I have still not received a response from Dunn regarding the public record request for Encino's 2007 Dunn-approved election procedures and the reason for delaying the request. The email was sent on Monday, June 18th. I also haven't gotten a response from Carol Thorpe from an email dated June 18th where the subject was Update Urgent Encino NC 62807 Election Need to Postpone, email 52907. In it, I went and I said that I have not received any written communications from you or any other Dunn staff regarding the postponement of Encino's 62807 election, at that time only 10 days away. I told you in my email dated 6608 and resent on 6807, oops, wrong date, unscheduled 6107 meeting with Tom Soon that Tom provided no information to me that the meeting was, and Tom provided no information to me and that the meeting that we had was a waste of my time. How can a person that wants a meeting to discuss specific questions asked of Dunn come with no information to offer? Why hasn't anyone addressed my concerns about this election? What is the status of Encino's 62807 election? If it is going forward, please explain in detail why it is okay to go forward with the election after the concerns I have raised regarding the ENC Dunn approved election procedures and that the ENC election procedures were not in compliance with the NC procedures approved by LA City Council 12505 in my email to you on 52907. There also has been no ENC outreach regarding the ENC election mailing since April 25th of 07, which was a Dunn printing with incorrect information, date regarding when candidate forms had to be returned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Richard Hilton here in Council Chambers. Richard Hilton. Good morning, Mr. Hilton.
I held a press conference yesterday. Oh, by the way, how much time do I have? 2 minutes? Press conference yesterday to save the oldest house in Van Nuys. I've been talking to Councilman Cardenas' office actually for months, but most directly about a week and a half ago, intensely, with both previous and present aides. I basically feel I've been given the sort of runaround by the office, not responding to whether the councilman was going to intervene for the developer to knock this down, which I heard was going to happen tomorrow. So, not getting a response, we were forced to hold a press conference, and the result was several press conferences. I came down here today as a last-ditch effort, possibly to appeal to the council to apply Rule 23, if possible, which Councilmember Wendy Gruhl did on the Weatherwalled Castle, I think about a year ago. That was my intention today. I drove by the property this morning, and of course, the developer knocked it down, partly because he was contacted by office staff a couple of days ago. I have been giving several attempts to contact staff and have not heard a thing from them since Monday night. The system is flawed. The early notification system is available to a developer to knock this stuff down. The Office of Historic Resources and the Cultural Heritage Commission have been fantastic. I was 3 weeks away from nominating this as a cultural historic monument. They've been fantastic, and I'm very disappointed in the councilman's office and the fact that no intervention was taken. This is a perfect example. You don't contact the developer. Our press conference was, like I say, was a last-ditch effort, and unfortunately, my intention here today is now moot. Please, folks, let's save these things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hilton. We appreciate it. That is our final public comment. I'd like to recognize Mr. Rosendahl to say something about an item that we voted on. Mr. Rosendahl?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. It was item 29 that we as a council approved earlier in this moment. It gives us and comfort to our Westchester and Playa del Rey residents that we are going to do a very significant safety study about the northern runway. We're going to bring the best and the brightest. We encourage BOAC, that is the Airport Commission, to do a first-class study analysis of safety issues. Maybe bring in NASA, maybe bring in RAND, but do something that takes a good period of analysis. And once that safety study is done, then go into the 2-year program that would be an EIR. And I just want to thank the Westchester community for the town hall. I want to thank Gina Marie Lindsay from the department. I want to thank Alan Rothenberg from the commission. And everybody came to a consensus that safety is our number one concern, Mr. President, at the airport. And with that safety study first, then we can go forward with the others. So thank you, colleagues, for your support on that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We have 19 that was held just for 12 members. If we could take that up next. Nobody wishes to be heard on it. Let's open the roll. Let's close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Okay. And if there's no objection, we'll also send 45 forthwith. And with that, Mr. Labange has asked for item number 50 out of order. If there's no objection, we'll take item number 50. Okay? Yes.
President, members, good morning. This is a very important item here. If we could roll up there on item number 50, and I don't want to break any protocol, so I want Mr. Rosendahl to stand at the podium, and maybe Ms. Gruhl could stand at the podium, and you could take these very special resolutions that I'm going to come over and honor somebody as well.
Go ahead.
Is it okay?
Yep,
come
sure.
on. Thank you, members and Mr. President. This morning I was out at the Autry National Center where we kicked off an issue about the wildlife and watershed council, and there was a citizen there who I spoke of who started a lot of that movement. And it's interesting today, as things happen in a day, you come back and then you're honoring someone who contributed greatly to AIDS awareness by being named as the first AIDS coordinator by the city of Los Angeles. Fern Egan right here. Let's give him a big hand right here on this day here. Look around all those people. Good job. And Steve Simon, come join me right here if you would, please. Because we're kicking off an event here, but I wanted to honor you first. along with Mr. Rosendahl and Ms. Gruhl and all the members of council, including our very own mayor and city controller and city attorney, because when the first person organizes an effort to make a difference in this city and does a great job, turn around and look again at all those great friends who came down here, fought the traffic to come and honor you. This is very special. During Fern's time, his tenure, the scope and visibility of this office of AIDS coordinator for Los Angeles was greatly expanded throughout the city, and AIDS awareness. And I remember in the beginning days when there were so many challenges that people thought if you touched somebody or hugged somebody, you'd get in trouble. All right?
You might still get in trouble.
You still might get in trouble. That's right. Yeah, that's right. But you understand what I'm saying. But that awareness was brought up where people understood about this very terrible disease. Fred was instrumental in the development of the city's HIV prevention program, including the establishment of the syringe exchange program, which has curbed the spread of HIV throughout Los Angeles. He has dedicated his life to enhancing the quality of life for people living with HIV and AIDS, and for his 10 years, the executive director of Being Alive, his work of ACT UP LA, his 10 years AIDS coordinator, to the current internet blog following his life as a person living with AIDS, he is certainly to be commended. Fern Egan continues to be a respected leader in the AIDS community, in the Los Angeles community, and here in the John Farrell Chambers. You look at the love that is around you, you're truly a respected man. Now, therefore, be it resolved by adoption of this resolution, the mayor of the great city of Los Angeles, along with the city attorney, the city controller, and all of the city council, hereby honor Fern Egan for his leadership in educating individuals about AIDS and HIV in the city of Los Angeles, and in honor urge all of our diverse community in Los Angeles to the betterment to understand HIV transmission and assess the risk for AIDS infection and get tested for HIV. I am, as chairman of the Arts and Health Committee, hereby joined by members to formally present this great resolution with the great seal of the city of Los Angeles. As we go forward, I want to call somebody who's very special to us all, and what is great about, and I haven't, and members, have you ever seen a pack of love around anybody at this podium like you see right now? Give yourselves a big hand coming down here. I want to call on Bill Rosendahl, very much a passionate member of City Council, to speak at this moment. Bill Rosendahl.
It's a very serious and very emotional and a very gratifying and a beautiful moment for all of us to be here. Many of you know that in 1995 I lost my partner, Christopher Lee Blauman, to AIDS. Many of us lost our friends and our relatives. From about mid-1985 to mid-1985 to 1995, that 10-year period, tens of thousands of Los Angelinos died to AIDS. In the early days of AIDS, it was gayness and AIDS, and people died. It had one silver lining, and that was family and friends began to realize that gay people are everywhere. Parents were told, brothers were told, fathers were told, and that became a positive part of it, because when we were able to say that we know somebody that is gay, and it's my brother, it's my father, it's my uncle, it became a revolutionary thing that gay people were dying. It was a dark secret for many years. The suffering was unparalleled. I still cry over all the friends I've lost. And when this great city stepped forward and put Fern in that position, an example of a person who believes that we should be treated with respect and dignity, that we should have the health care provided, we should not be stigmatized, we should not be discriminated against. This gentleman that I'm holding in my arm right now was one of the true leaders of our great city, our county, our state, and our nation. And we are so honored to be able to stand here today to honor him and those behind me who have fought the battle
the battle for life and survival against the discrimination and the hatred and the suffering. Unfortunately, AIDS continues to spread. In this country, young kids are still dying of AIDS, and women of color are getting AIDS. And I must say, unfortunately, around the great world we live in, that AIDS prevention and the therapies have not been forthwith. 12 million people have died in sub-Saharan Africa. It is now spreading to India and to China. The world must be on notice that we cannot let this disease continue as rapidly as it is. But boy, the man that I'm holding in my arm is such a leader, and we are all blessed that he's standing here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Councilmember Winnie Rule.
Thank you, Mr. LaBonge, and thank you for your leadership in acknowledging FERD today. Many of you may recall in 1985, the city and county of Los Angeles, particularly Supervisor Edelman and Mayor Bradley, started the first City-County AIDS Commission because at that time the county refused to acknowledge that this was an issue that we needed to deal with and that it was of such importance to have a commission that would begin to address so many issues of not only discrimination but health issues. And during that time period, there were individuals who stood up and who were part of the system to change the way we looked at the issue of AIDS. And Ferd Egan was one of those individuals. I can't tell you how many countless conversations we had late into the night, on the weekends, where Ferd was frustrated with the bureaucracy, frustrated with how we couldn't move things as fast as we needed to because, as Mr. Rosenthal mentioned, people were dying every single day. But Ferd had that passion and that commitment, and I think one of those who would not take no for an answer. And our relationship spanned from both the time in the mayor's office to my time at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which was one of the departments also addressing the issue of AIDS housing and how we could deal with individuals who had AIDS. We're happy that Ferd throughout this and struggling as a person with AIDS was there from the heart, and you see so many people around him today. He is an individual who changed the face of how we as a city addressed the issue of AIDS. So there are countless people, Ferd, that you may not know. All the people around you here know you, but there are people out there who benefited from what you did, benefited from you standing up and saying, I'm going to address the issue of AIDS, and I'm going to provide the services and the advocacy to make sure that that happened. And so thank you to you, Ferd, for what you have done here locally and nationally on this issue and for people whose lives you changed, including mine as a friend of yours.
Thank you, Ms. Gruhl. I'm going to ask Regina Houston-Swain, our General Manager of the Office of Disability, who coordinates this, to say a few words.
Good morning. I've had the privilege of being a co-worker of Ferd Egan's, and today it's a pleasure to welcome Mary Lucy, who a former AIDS coordinator, and Steve Simon, the standing AIDS coordinator, here today. Thank you, Ferd, for being a pioneer in the field of AIDS education and prevention. Thank you very much.
Regina, thank you. And as I'm just going to pass the baton to Steve Simon, who's done such a great job as we continue with this very important tribute and also awareness.
Did you want to have Ferd take your words first?
Yeah. All right, good. I'm going to hold Steve. We're in Hollywood. We take two. Here we go right now for remarks. Ferd, please welcome the man we honor today, Ferd Egan.
Well, Mr. President, honorable members of the City Council, and comrades and friends, thanks for remembering my work as City AIDS Coordinator from 91 to 2001. I'll take this honor in order to be able to honor the other members of my team at that well, who are Marlene Vela, Jerry Davila, Mary Lucy, who was just mentioned, Tirda Zangana, who is now the chief resident at University Hospital in Miami, Khadija Nurullah, and my bosses at that time, Steve Porter and Parker Anderson, and you, the city councilor, ultimately the bosses of, well, you're the boss of me, among others. And I think that it's important to remember that in very different circumstances than obtained now, we were able to do some useful things for people with HIV and AIDS and for those at risk for infection with HIV. A few of them were hiring the first woman with AIDS on the job, supporting and then stabilizing the Organization of Women Alive, one of the most important national voices of women, and supporting and making possible through practical and flexible harm reduction practices a needle exchange, one of the very first that actually established itself in an official way with an official relationship to the city of Los Angeles, and one in which I take great pride, and I hope that the city as a whole takes pride in the fact that we are able to act in a practical way to try to stop that practice that leads to so many deaths. We also sponsored seminal research on the first of the three big obstacles to a viable living with HIV that is still listed first among people with AIDS. They list in order: housing, then they list housing, and third, they list housing. And the fact is that despite controversy, we were able to fund research and to therefore foment changes in housing policy. That's what several of the nights that Wendy Brule was talking about, your council member. And because that program, which is still exists and is called Safe House, existed, there were no provisions for the drug-connected, the drug-dependent persons who we find in our midst as part of the population of people living with AIDS. There they have a safe and protected place where they can live their lives without the discrimination and stigmatization that was referred to earlier so clearly. Now, I just want to point out, because I'm famous for being long-winded, so I'll start apologizing now. All of these things could happen because of the progressive spirit that an independent AIDS coordinator with no vested interest could count on from the City Council. We were free to innovate because we were not the recipients of large federal monies, which is always a necessary stance that makes this city, as opposed to other institutions, able to sponsor new research without the cumbersome processes that beset larger administrative units. And despite the rumors that I hear that there's flagging enthusiasm for expenditures on AIDS, and of course what is increasingly and devastatingly clear to the young women and men who are supposedly serving the interests of this country overseas, because of that conjunction of circumstances which did not obtain during the high point of the epidemic in terms of its publicity, there is an inevitable tendency to move on to the next most popular issue. I urge that our AIDS program retain its vigor that comes from these special set of circumstances that exist now, the circumstances of war, the circumstances of much of the city that we care about the most, Los Angeles, being as if it were at war, even if it's not the streets of Baghdad. I think that we were not able, under either those earlier set of political circumstances or the newer set of political circumstances, to do all the things that this council and all the people living with HIV and AIDS need to have done. That's obvious, glaringly obvious to far too many people. And I know that the city, I count on the city to maintain its commitment and to work to really move beyond things like the abstinence-only models that are foisted upon people who know far better what is important and appropriate for the lives of people with AIDS. I urge them to keep remembering that we are, among all the cities of the world, one of the most important destination cities for immigrants, and that immigration and the persons who come to this country under circumstances of economic need, political flight, or other circumstances, that they also retain, and that this council work, as it has through resolution and other works, that the council work to retain its support for all the persons with AIDS, regardless of citizenship, who cross the borderline to try to find an adequate life in this country. I think that's enough, because I don't want to apologize too many times for using your valuable time. But I am profoundly appreciative that you would remember the work of that period. I'm profoundly glad that Steve Simon has worked very tirelessly in a job that I'm not sure that I would recommend as a relaxation for any person, but he's struggled admirably with the job, as we all have tried to when it was our turn to fill those shoes. And so I thank you all very much. This is an exciting visit for me, because I used to, of course, come here with people to confer, to receive the blessing of affirmation by the council through similar beautiful artwork. And it's nice to be back here for a day and remember those experiences. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And Mr. President, if I could ask Steve Simon just to tie it all together, because we all support HIV counseling and testing days here in Los Angeles. Stephen?
Thank you, Council Member. Thank you for indulging us for this time. This is very important. As you've heard, the people behind and around me are some of the most incredible leaders in the world in the fight against HIV, and this City Council is as well. LA has a historic leadership role in the fight against HIV and AIDS. The agendized item today is National HIV Testing Week. It's next week, the 25th to the 29th. It will be the most extensive testing day that the City of Los Angeles has been involved in ever. My office is working closely with the Office of AIDS Programs and Policy for the County of Los Angeles, and together we're working with numerous community-based organizations to provide testing to over 1,500 people next week alone. This is part of a nationwide testing effort called the Mayor's Campaign Against HIV, coordinated by the National Association of People with AIDS. Mayor Villaraigosa confirmed the city's participation and has secured over 500 free HIV tests to help us conduct the testing next week. These partnerships are key steps in us introducing the City of Los Angeles HIV Testing Initiative. It's a 3-year pilot program significantly expanding testing and counseling that targets high-risk geographic areas across Los Angeles. The initiative is built on 5 core strategies. We will increase local implementation of the Centers for Disease Control recommendations that routine HIV testing be available through your family physician. We will increase testing at special community-based events in every single council district, at health fairs, festivals, sporting events, concerts, and at all 14 colleges and universities in Los Angeles. We will coordinate with local faith-based initiatives. We will increase public and private school testing, education, and awareness to protect our youth, and we will address the legislative and policy changes at the county, state, and federal level we need to expand HIV testing. Bottom line, how difficult is an HIV test, folks? Either you prick your finger and stick it on a little item and they can test you in 20 minutes, or you take a little oral swab, they put it on your top gum, on your bottom gum. A counselor will talk to you about some of the reasons you may be at risk. And again, in 20 minutes, you'll know your status. If you're negative, the counselor will talk to you about how to stay negative. If you're positive, they can get you directly into care and treatment. We need to tell the public to get HIV testing. It's that simple. Bottom line, we have received $100,000 to initiate this first phase of the testing initiative. We've partnered up with Minority AIDS Project, Planned Parenthood Los Angeles, Drew University of Medicine and Science, and of course Gilead Sciences were the benefactors and supporters for this first year. If Gilead folks would raise their hands, Minority AIDS Project. Planned Parenthood is here. This is an incredible and historic partnership. That said, together here in Los Angeles, we're taking the first steps towards the largest and most successful testing initiative in the history of the U.S. And of course, we wouldn't be here without our prior leaders, who are still our leaders, like Ferd. So thank you for your time and your commitment.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, members, thank you very much for the time. I'm going to ask that our photographers shoot this great group shot right here. Everybody get around. A lot of love over here. We'll get you right there. We'll get everybody around. We don't want to block
Thank you very much, Mr. Labange. Let's go ahead. We have a vote on this item. If we can please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 eyes.
That is approved. Thank you very much, Mr. Labange. Next item, please. We'll send that forthwith. Mr. Reyes?
Just wanted to, on behalf of Councilmember Weston, continue item 23 to June 29th.
Okay, Mr. Parks has called that special, so we'll get the staffs to talk about that. Okay. And meanwhile, we have a commissioner, item number 17.
Can we all go in the back room?
And I'd like to recognize Ms. Hahn for our reappointment of Douglas Kraus to the Harbor Commission. If we can ask Mr. Kraus to come forward. And as our chair of our Trade, Commerce, and Tourism Committee, we'll recognize Ms. Hahn. If you'd like to come forward to the table, please. Thank you. Ms. Hahn.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Well, we have before us Doug Kraus for a reappointment to the very important Harbor Commission. And we had a very good discussion in Commerce this morning, Councilmember Rosendahl and I. But maybe just for the sake of the council members and those who would be watching on Channel 35, you've been there 2 years. As I told you, I thought you were a very interesting appointment because you have a financial background. And when you were appointed, I wasn't sure how much knowledge you actually had about our working port and how it fit in with the economy of Los Angeles. But maybe you could tell us maybe what your accomplishments have been in 2 years, and then maybe what are some of the challenges that you faced and you still think are out there for us at the Port of Los Angeles. Could you hold my time, please?
Sure. Absolutely. Our main focus the last couple of years really has been our Clean Air Action Plan and also bringing in kind of change agents, people and plans to get the port moving in different directions. It's been fascinating as a banker coming in, just the amount of money that the port has. That I think one of the challenges the next couple of years will be to use that prudently and look for ways to kind of help our local community. Not just to, we have tons of resources there, and it's kind of, it is, as I think we've talked about, it's kind of sad to drive around Wilmington and San Pedro, seeing boarded up stores and closed houses and so forth, yet when the port is sitting on these huge financial resources. So a big emphasis in the next couple of years will be on economic redevelopment and how to better use our resources.
Well, thank you. I'm just going to follow up a little bit on your comment about Wilmington and San Pedro and closed up stores. One of the things that I've really been championing since I got elected was the development of the waterfront, both in Wilmington and San Pedro. It's a project that will, in my opinion, will not only benefit Wilmington and San Pedro, but it will really benefit the city of Los Angeles. And we had an original analysis of building a first-class promenade waterfront in Wilmington and San Pedro, and we had an estimate that it would create like 19,000 jobs. And the kind of revenue that would come into a waterfront based on increase in tourism would really help us down here at City Hall, because we know that the tourism dollars actually are dollars that go into our general fund, and we can hire more cops, hire more firefighters, fix more streets. So we think that project is something that ought to be moved. I expressed my frustration that I didn't think your commission was pushing hard enough to complete that waterfront development. So I'd love to have you on record. Give us your commitment or some challenges you think that are facing us in terms of completing that aggressive project. Hold my time, please.
Yeah, I think that should be one of our big focuses for the next couple of years. The last couple of years, to be honest, we haven't ignored it, but we've been focusing on other things. And I absolutely think you're right. Kind of the time is here. We have I think the people down there, and we have the support in City Hall, and we have the financial resources to really look at that and decide what where we want to do. We have a lot of information right now. It's time to kind of put it together, move forward.
Good. We want to hear that. We really want you to push
Yeah.
that, because we know if you don't push things,
Yes.
it doesn't get built. And particularly since the Port of Los Angeles' core mission has always been cargo, goods movement. We know that this is a little bit off in terms of what you usually do, but we think it's the right thing to do. You have the money to invest in that kind of infrastructure for a Grand Promenade along the main channel, so we really want you to do that. We know you've been focusing on the Clean Air Action Plan, which is historic. Historic that both ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles agreed on trying to reduce those emissions. But I'm concerned, that will really be implemented. I'm concerned that even with the Clean Air Action Plan, the growth in cargo and the growth in cargo-related pollution is something that we're not going to really get a handle on, and it will continue to contribute to premature deaths, missed school days, lost productivity in the workplace, congestion on our freeways. What is your perspective in how we really get a handle on keeping that economic engine, but not accounting for premature deaths in the state of California?
Well, I think your concerns are right. I mean, our Clean Air Action Plan is moving forward nicely, but it's just a plan. Until it's implemented, we have all sorts of plans for all kinds of things. I guess all governments are great planners, but to actually kind of implement it and actually push the plan forward is very important.
What role does the Commission have in implementing that plan, or making sure that it is implemented?
I think it's really pushing the staff and keeping that on the agenda, keeping it front and center, making sure that that's going forward. I think some of it will depend on we need to be a little more innovative in terms of, which we are doing, in terms of kind of looking for solutions ourselves, kind of trying out different technologies, funding this and that, and seeing what gels. I realize that there's a lot of concern and mistrust, and maybe it's a little bit like that Earl TV show where you have this big list of bad things you've done in the past, and you want to make up for it, but people don't really know whether you are or not. But we are committed to that.
Because, again, I think you're right. It's a great plan, but unless it's implemented, we're still going to continue to see the kind of pollution that is deadly. I don't see my council member, Greg Smith, here, but Greg and I are, there is Greg. Greg and I are very excited about pushing the possibility of maglev. We think maglev for passengers and cargo is the kind of technology that is available today that will get us to the place where we can move cargo and not, kill people with the pollution. Would really like to have the Commission take a good hard look at the feasibility of investing in a maglev system that could move cargo from the harbor all the way out to the Inland Empire.
Yeah, we are looking at that. I agree with you absolutely on that. And again, no matter how clean the truck is, you got to get them off the freeways at some point.
Right.
And we need some sort of system like that.
Right. And the other thing I'd like to have you go on record is saying, I'd like you to take another look at my request that the harbor invest $1 million in a feasibility study to connect the Green Line with a harbor line. We in the harbor area are very disconnected from public transit in Los Angeles. We know we have the Blue Line and the Gold Line and the Red Line and the Aqua Line and the Expo Line, but it makes sense to have a harbor line that comes right down from the Green Line, connects to the Port of Los Angeles, and then everyone who flies into LAX and is going on a cruise, hop on the Green Line, hop on the harbor line, and be put right at the San Pedro terminal. Time has come. MTA doesn't feel like they're able to fund that kind of feasibility study, but as I told you, the nexus for me with the harbor is it makes sense to relieve our arteries of commuter traffic so that we can keep it open for moving the goods. So I'd like you to take another look at that. Can I get your commitment to do that?
I will see we look at that again.
Thank you.
Got it.
Thank you. Well, again, colleagues, I'm happy to recommend his reappointment. I think there's a lot of challenges ahead, but I think if I can say anything to you today, Doug, is as the citizen commissioner, push. Clean that port, green that port. I don't think you have to worry about growing the port. It's growing on its own. But then let's work on the infrastructure for goods movement, passenger movement, so we can make the whole area more livable around the Port of Los Angeles.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hahn. Mr. Rosendahl is our next speaker, and then Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. President. One of the amazing things about this job, we can go from a very emotional, absolutely devastating AIDS issue and wear our red ribbon, and in the next breath get into the next discussion that's so positive. First, I want to thank you, Doug, for stepping back up to the plate. But just to echo Ms. Hahn, there's a lot of money there at that port that needs to be spread around properly for the quality of life in our region. First of all, a living wage needs to be for all the workers that interact with that port, considering how exciting that port is to the whole nation. Secondly, the transportation infrastructure to move those goods throughout this great nation needs to be part of how the profits of the port are spent. Indeed, I went to Shanghai with Mr. Smith. He urged me to go to look at maglev, and then we went to Nagoya, Japan, and looked at the bullet train. I'm not wed to either one, the bullet train or maglev, but I am to a high-speed rail that is clean, that takes the goods out of that port instead of all these gas-guzzling trucks that we presently have on the 710. But let's look at infrastructure. Obviously, when Ms. Hahn said the Green Line, that's close to my heart. We want it into LAX. We want it down to Torrance and up to Santa Monica. We have no coastal relief west of the 405 in a mass transit, and we're fed up with the gridlock we're in. And of course, Wilmington and San Pedro, two jewels on the ocean, need to be getting some of that money for redevelopment and making that a place of destination as well. You being a financial wizard with David Friedman, a visionary out of the box, and Dr. Geraldine Nash, the new port director, we have the critical mass of leadership that will move us forward in the right way. So congratulations for stepping out, and we're going to put a motion forward on this council floor to see how those funds can come into the mix of the Southern California strategy for the future. Thank you so much for stepping.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Councilmember Reyes, and after that will be Councilmember LaBonge. Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. First, I want to congratulate you for the hard work. But I also wanted to ask one question. We know that this is an economic engine, not only for the city, but for the region, if not play a significant role in the international economy. That being said, I've been asking the question from the executive who runs the operations there, and to you as commissioner, potential commissioner, the ability to hire locally, the ability to hire youngsters, seeing that right around you, and I've studied the socioeconomic demographics, significant area of unemployment, need for training and development for youngsters to build up their trades, as our trade and skill set in construction and power lines and everything else that goes with running a harbor. Folks are retiring. Our schools no longer teach what they used to in terms of those skills. As a commissioner, do you see yourself, or could you put yourself in a place where we can start building up that capacity and formalizing our ability to hire locally, especially our youngsters?
Yeah, those are good points. We're already working with one of the local schools on a trade academy. There is a big need for people to come up and get trained. Even we're also looking, even with our own port staff, we're doing studies about how many people are getting close to retirement age and the people we need to replace. I think that is a big concern down there, to kind of get the newer people to come in. Both, we just need the people as the port expands, and partly these people here need jobs.
So as a commissioner, you would be in a position to evaluate the executive arm of the harbor to annually assess how effective they've been in hiring young people in that area, correct?
Yes.
Is that something that perhaps as a commissioner you could recommend or suggest as a major factor in looking how effective the executive management could be in that position?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's something we should be considering. That is one of the focuses we should be having. Yes.
I would love to see at some near future, next year or two, an evaluation process that speaks to their efficiencies in hiring locally.
Okay.
So I think that would go a long way in supporting Councilmember Han's goals in improving the quality of life for the community there.
Yeah, there's a good point. And I'll try to get you more information on our current initiatives in that area also.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Labange is our next speaker.
Okay, congratulations, Commissioner, for your reappointment.
Thank you.
Pretend I just got here right now, and you're going to tell me what you're going to do to make that waterfront nicer. And you're going to connect those tours from those, what you call the ships that have the cruising, to connect to the other part of the dynamic of L.A.
You know, I think the cruises could be a big part of the redevelopment there. There's a lot of people coming to the port that really, some of them spent. The studies we've done so far show that the average spending by a cruise passenger here is a lot less than in other cities. It's really kind of known as an embarkation point. You know, people get at LAX or they drive in, jump in their cruise, and they go. I think part of the LA redevelopment plan, it's creating kind of a draw for an economic opportunity for people locally, but a draw for the rest of the city, but also the same attractions are going to be, hopefully will draw the cruise industry and kind of make it an attraction point where people want to spend a couple days there, spend a little money there.
Sure, and then connect it to other parts of the region, be it Hollywood or Universal City or Pasadena or wherever it is. You know, we are the engine, Los Angeles, 226 years ago. I don't want to say engine, but you know, you would be it if the water was in San Pedro, not the salt water. They would have started the city there, but it was on the banks of the LA River right here, and that's where the city started.
Yeah, it's an ideal location for that.
What Mr. Reyes was speaking about, what is your relationship with Harbor College, and is Harbor College deeply embedded in what the Harbor is doing so it can train young people, or do you know?
You know, I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure there's a big relationship with Harbor College. There is with some of the local high schools.
Right. Well, just see if you could make one there, because our community colleges are underloved, and they're one of the. I benefited from my Los Angeles City College that got me to State College, that got me along the way, and I think they're great schools. I went to City College, but Harbor's a great school.
Okay.
And,
I'll look at that more, to be honest. I don't know that much about it.
And I appreciate all the extra work that you do in supporting the initiatives of Ms. Hahn, who's my colleague, because all of us are passionate about our district. Her passion for all of Wilmington and what has gotten a tougher deck over the years, if I could say that, dealt to them, to that of San Pedro needs to be dealt with appropriately. And bringing people back to the water is so important. And also supporting the Los Angeles City Fire Department, which has those great boats that do the protection. They told me, Ms. Hahn, I don't know if I had a chance to mention to you this, if there was water in the LA River, they would have come right up and helped us in Griffith Park with boat number 4. So this is important while getting water back to the LA River. Anyway, keep up the good work. Make people look to the vision of connecting the community, which is so valuable. It's my favorite second neighborhood in Los Angeles. I spent Father's evening there, Father's Day evening, whatever the thing is, with my family, because I love San Pedro and the area, and the needs for Wilmington and San Pedro should be addressed appropriately, and you look like you're committed to do it. Check out Harbor College and keep that cruise business going appropriately, because that's good green dollars, as Michael Collins says over at LA Inc. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, and we're looking forward to being down in the harbor next month as a body. So with that, let's go ahead and open the roll on the renomination, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. Congratulations. A round of applause for our commissioner.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Next, we take 54 out of order. Mr. Zine is withdrawn, calling that special. Nobody wishes to be heard. Let's go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Next item is item number 18, and that was called special by Councilmember Parks.
Mr. Parks, item number 18.
We're going to defer Mr. Zine, I think, has a motion on that item.
Oh, he's back. Why don't we hold that then on the desk? Okay. Next item, please, in the meantime.
Next item is item number 22, and that was called special by Councilmember Perry.
Okay, Ms. Perry, item number 22.
Thanks very much, Mr. President. After many, many months of task force meetings, I'm pleased that this item is before our council today. It's very important that as a body we take the necessary actions to ensure that local residents are getting construction jobs created by some of these massive city projects. Local hiring is something we all talk about, from Councilmember Wesson and Garcetti's effort to the retrofitting of green buildings to the mayor's efforts to provide a steady pipeline of candidates to the trades. From the faith-based initiative, we're striving to create employment opportunities for those who are normally disenfranchised from those opportunities. So today we're going to take an important step in that direction by authorizing the Community Development Department to commence the Economic Roundtable study. It is important to establish a nexus between unemployment rates and specific areas of the city. To go beyond the anecdotal, so for that information we know is true and accurate, that this study will create the basis and the foundation to make the findings to require local hiring on city construction jobs. I also want to say thank you to the City Attorney's Office and the Bureau of Contract Administration for the excellent research they have done on ordinances from other municipalities around the country that have already been adopted. And I hope that we will be back before our council very quickly with a real mechanism to require local hiring on city construction jobs. So I ask for your support.
Thank you very much. Mr. Parks is our next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'd like to thank Ms. Perry on this motion. This is probably the most asked question in my district when there's any kind of a project as to local hire. How do people that are in the community get access to employment? How do they get access to skills? How do they get a chance to get an intern program that then gives them the ability to get a real job? And I think with the amount of development in this city, as we look at it overall, collectively, we should be investing in our residents. And it's the best, as I always tell people, the best crime prevention we can do. And I capture Father Boyle's statement, the best way to stop a bullet is a job. It is very, very true, in that we can find a way that our investment creates job opportunities create the issue of people dealing with literacy, their health, and eliminating poverty are probably the core issues that we can do the most about. We spend a lot of time and energy on issues that deal with the symptoms of these problems. We go out and we put beds for homeless, we put gang money in for apprehension, but in reality, if we can deal with the issue of the poverty, the issue of literacy, and the issue of health, we will solve most of those symptoms by dealing with the core issues. So I appreciate your efforts, Ms. Perry, because you've dealt with them on project by project. Now, with a city policy as we move forward, we can make sure that that's a part of the structure and the entitlements in each deal that comes through before the city.
Mr. Labange, then Mr. Reyes, then Mr. Huizar. Mr. Labange.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. Just a question. What if you live in an unincorporated area next to the city? Are you, what's the price? Is anyone on your staff here to answer this question? Does anybody know?
County for help.
I can't hear anything.
Go to the county for help.
Sorry, do we get a little...
County for help.
County?
For help.
The county will help?
Said they would go to the county for help.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, one thing I remember, I just want to state a statement here. I made a rule when I was working for the mayor's office in 1992. I said, I'm only going to hire city people. And the first person I interviewed happened to be a highly qualified person, but they were in a city that's right adjacent to Los Angeles. And whether it's Compton or Linwood or Long Beach, could anyone give me some correction here on this? Pasadena? I interviewed a guy from South Pasadena just yesterday.
Councilmember John Reamer, Director, Bureau of Contract Administration. We do currently have what's called project labor agreements on several projects in departments in the city of Los Angeles. The Department of Public Works being the largest with roughly 7 working now. The Los Angeles Harbor Department has 2. the World Airports is one, and with the airport and the harbor, they have what they call geographical impact zones. So these are areas that have been impacted by the work that takes place at the harbor and the airport.
So someone in Inglewood could be eligible
Yes.
for a job at the airport.
In those
Good.
scenarios,
So it's not
in those
just-
scenarios, that
I'm all
does
for
take place.
LA, but I'm also understand our borders are not pure as written in some sphere.
Robert Science, Assistant General Manager, Community Development Department. We have a cooperative agreement with our county work-star centers, and we don't recognize the county-city boundaries, and we mutually refer across county-city lines all the time.
Good, very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Onward and upward.
Mr. Reyes and then Mr. Weezer.
Yes, I just want to thank my colleagues, Councilor Perry and Parks and Weston, and those of us who've been pushing to address the needs of our youth. For the past 3 or 4 years, we've been asking the administration of all our departments, to start looking at this notion of hiring youth, creating jobs, not as a courtesy, not as a public relations effort, but a real tangible effort that speaks to accountability. I believe this study will at least give us the basis by which we identify where these populations exist. We know where they are, but we need to be able to justify and support our actions in court should we be challenged. So the nexus has to be established, and I believe the strength of Councilman Perry's effort is to get us on solid ground for asking, for imposing, for requiring these kinds of efforts. We have tremendous staff that's been working with us. It's about time that we give them the strength and the power to enter an office, whether it be in the city or in the private sector, and say, these are the folks that you can hire. Show us how well you've done. Tell us why we should be partners, knowing that you take advantage of our city resources, and this is a way to put forth the type of effort that allows our dollars to recycle within our own economic circles, within our neighborhoods, within our city. So for that, gentlemen, thank you for being there. I know we need to give you more strength. We need to give you more effort in terms of, we need to show more effort in how we can support you in making sure that you're not walking into these offices with hat in hand or with your hands open, but actually with a real red pen and say, this has to get done, this has to get placed in your particular business, and this is how we can hire youth, because they're ready. So thank you for your hard effort, and again, thanks my colleagues for their work. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weezer is our last speaker.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Great to see both of you and two individuals who I know are going to take this by the horns and move it forward. I want to thank the authors of this. I think this is wonderful, long overdue. And I know in my personal conversations with both of you, I've talked to you about what the school district did in the midst of the largest public works program in the country, a $16 billion program, building schools in some very low-income neighborhoods. And when we started this program over there, we looked around and said, well, wait a minute, we're not involving some of the folks involved in these projects. But we not only saw it as a way to gain meaningful employment to these individuals, but we also saw it as a way to build communities. Because when people build something in their neighborhood, they're proud of it, they're going to protect it, and it's going to build that community. So I think there's lots of benefits by doing this. And I know you will be looking at the We Build program, which I championed at the school district, where we got individuals who live locally near the schools, trained at one of our adult ed schools. We put them in an apprenticeship program with one of the unions, and within the first 2 years, we had 200 individuals living in some very low-income neighborhoods on the job, building schools, and that's a very successful program. I haven't looked at it recently, but at least when we initiated it, it got off the ground running. I know Mr. Zines was involved with that as well. And also, another level as well is something I know you've been involved with here. We also had the boot camp for small businesses, train them. I know you've been doing a lot of that here in the city. Yes. But I think there's some linkages there as well, because not only employment for people who want to work on these public works projects, but small business people in these communities who are oftentimes overlooked that are there saying, we see all the big boys coming by, but what about us? We've been here in this community, we haven't left, we've stuck it out, we're employing the person down the street. We also need to get involved in this as well, and sometimes it takes some training and support to do that as well. So I trust this is going to really hit the take off, and thanks for your focus on this, and thanks to the council members who brought this to our attention.
Thank you. Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning. I love the way you positively think. Just give us a quick thumbnail sketch of what we're doing.
Robert Science, AGM, CDD. What we're doing is actually transforming lives. If you want to hit the nail on the head, we are giving opportunities to our local residents to bid on jobs, to actually have access to the information of when jobs will become available. We're also encouraging our contractors, and actually taking it beyond encouraging. Hopefully, when we do get the local hiring policy in place, is that we will be requiring the contractors to hire from our local residents. We have thousands, and thanks to the great efforts of Councilman Weezar on the We Build program, we're training thousands of people throughout our district to fill these jobs within the trade industries. We also are working with the unions to open up the union process for our local residents. Often folks don't have access to that process. It could be quite daunting for someone who doesn't have any family members within the unions. Currently, through our efforts, we've opened about 250 positions as first-time apprentices through our efforts on the construction side. So on the thumbnail sketch, we are transforming lives.
Mm-hmm. And as you're transforming, which I think are thousands of people's lives, I keep carrying the cup. Homeboy industry, which means a job. A job is a pathway out of gangs. A job is a preventive strategy. It's an intervention strategy. It's the best kind of strategy dealing with young people going forward. When you envision this, will a young man or woman who goes through the criminal justice system that gets stamped as a felon, how will they be able to participate and how will they be able to get jobs in this program?
One of the best examples was a Times article that came out about 2 weeks ago, and the front page of the Metro section had a young man that went through the justice system who's now working for the iron workers. We are working directly with the unions. Many of them do not have those requirements that weed out. We also need to be able to look at our own city requirements, which oftentimes does not allow folks that have past indiscretions to come into the system. But they would be referred through our WorkSource system. We would be able to process them and provide them the referrals directly to their various apprentice programs.
And how many people do you think you can impact over the next couple of years on this?
Well, if any indication of the growth that we have, if you take something like the harbor, which was brought up earlier, where there's billions of dollars potentially going to be spent, not just on the capital infrastructure, but also on the logistics side of the equation, of the good movements coming in. We're projecting not small numbers. I think we would have probably with the city contracts alone, anywhere between 500 to 1,000, I think, in the first year. Excellent. And then we'll be able to have a projection from there.
And we want the same challenge at the airport. We're spending $3 to $5 billion in modernizing the airport, and we want to see the airport part of it. Last night, I was part of a group where they were getting involved, subcontracting work, minority firms, women, and it was exciting to see how they could participate in the process. Have we looked at the airport and the billions of dollars we're going to spend there and how we tie it into this program?
Well, I'll take the first crack and I'll turn it over to John. The airport part is something that we've had a little bit of frustration with ourselves.
Why?
The airport has established the First Source hiring program, which and has staff dedicated to it, and they're doing a fabulous job. This council actually put $15 million in training over the next 5 years to train local residents, both city and the related area. They have not been able to come to agreement with FAA on how to expend those dollars. So it's one area that we still need.
So the FAA is holding this up?
Currently. So there's one area that we still need to be able to work on. I think looking at our economic development engines from CRA, DWP, Harbor, and the airports are all right things to do.
Because I met with Mayor Dorn yesterday of Englewood, who is so focused on wanting to do more with his community. We've done the whole community outreach in terms of soundproofing houses and things like that about the airport. But jobs for those young people, be it the city of LA or the city of Englewood, we're all connected here. And gangs are all connected within that mix too.
You know, Councilman, with that said, that's the external challenge, but internally they are committed. They do currently have a project labor agreement with a local hire component with Clark Contracting on the Tom Bradley International Terminal. So, I mean, this is roughly a $600 million project, and there is a desire there to reach out and create opportunities. So we have been working with them. We're overseeing portions of that project labor agreement, but the connection here is going to be a partnering effort between CDD, BCA, the airport, as well as Harbor and the other proprietary departments by what I like to coin the phrase CAO, capacity and accountability creates opportunity. And what we want to do in the city of LA is shine light into the lives of many of these young people. Light being lifting individuals, giving hope today. Hope is the key word. Robert spoke to a fresh start. I like the term hope. We are giving hope back to many who, quite frankly, feel disenfranchised. So by instilling the confidence that the city does care, we are concerned, and this is a great first step. Let me tell you something. This speaks very loudly to the fact that we do want opportunities to happen.
And I must say, I applaud you for your leadership on it. The mayor appointed a new czar, gang czar, whatever he's calling this position. They have to plug directly into you because the solution for gangs is prevention and intervention as the future way of doing it, and you guys are part of the prevention and intervention strategy. Thank you so much for what you're doing for us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And with that, let's go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Thank you. If we can reconsider 21, I'd like to add a verbal amendment to that. Please open the roll. Reconsideration, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Recommendation 3B, the total amount is $69,784, and I will give that to the clerk right now. And as amended, if we can open the roll on 21, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. If there's no objection, forthwith on 21, please. Mr. Weiss has asked for 48 out of order. And do you want to take the comment card first? Okay. If there's no objection, we'll take 48 now. And I'd like to ask Alexandra Tower to come forward to the podium and give comments. Thank you.
Thank you. We have an opportunity to allow local government to provide leadership and funding on stormwater pollution abatement and flood control. Tom Torlakson, Chair of Senate Finance, has introduced a constitutional amendment to provide relief from Proposition 218. SCA 12 amends California Constitution to make fees for stormwater and urban runoff management work the same as fees for garbage collection, sewer treatment, and water. We know that there are no funds or very little funds to deal with the pollution issue here and in most cities. If SCA 12 passes, stormwater and flood control fees and the increases will be exempt from Proposition 218 requirements. We have a responsibility to the Federal Clean Water Act, which placed more responsibility on local governments to monitor and treat stormwater and urban runoff in recent years. Runoff washes pollution and debris into creeks, rivers, bays, and oceans. It's also a common cause for beach closures and advisories. It's a complete human health risk. Without proper flood control, there is a tremendous risk for loss of property and loss of life. If this amendment passes, the power will be given to local elected officials to manage stormwater and flood control effectively with the funds necessary to provide a safer, cleaner community. We have a strong author, Tom Torlakson. We have a huge need and a tremendous opportunity here. We need a 2/3 vote and require bipartisan support. We need the support of each of you to get SCA 12 passed. Thank you.
Ms. Tower, thank you very much. Mr. Weiss, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank Dr. Tower for speaking today, and I especially want to thank Mr. Smith for waiving the matter out of committee so that the council could take a position, and so the position could get transmitted up to Sacramento before the hearing on the matter, which I understand is next week. If this became law in the state of California, then cities such as ours would have the opportunity to decide whether and how to assess such fees. It wouldn't mean we'd have to. It wouldn't mean the sky would be falling. It wouldn't mean that such fees would necessarily be assessed, but it would mean that we could. And as we saw, and Mr. Garcetti knows so well because he championed Prop O, the needs are just going to continue to grow in the area of urban runoff and stormwater, and it would be a very reasonable thing for the people of the state to do to amend the state constitution this way. That's what folks in Sacramento, the Torlakson Yee bill, or it's not a bill, it's a proposed constitutional amendment, is all about. And with an aye vote, we can put the biggest city in the state on record up there before this important hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Weiss. I was proud to introduce this with you, and thank you, Mr. Smith, for waiving it, considering the time, and thank you as well to Heal the Bay for their advocacy, and really all the environmental groups that have come together. Ms. Perry had in committee just yesterday in Energy and Environment the last round of Prop O dollars. Let me restate that again. The last round of Prop O dollars yesterday, we voted on in Energy and Environment Committee, and if no more money comes in, that's it, folks. That's $500 million we knew was not going to make all the water clean in Los Angeles. It's going to make a huge impact, but we're going to have 65, I think, different requirements of pollutants we have to take out of different bodies of water throughout Los Angeles, from Echo Park Lake to the harbor, from our Los Angeles River. I talked about Mr. Smith's project in CD12 at the Aliso Wash, is that right? And our needs to make sure we might be able to get some savings from Prop O still for that. We're going to fight for that in CD12, but we've got whole parts of the city we haven't even touched yet. This is an important amendment, and I know Mr. Rosendahl, when we were talking about housing, and you talked about trying to reduce the threshold for a vote on a housing bond, something we prioritize in the state on school building as well. This allows us to have a slightly different mechanism, but essentially it allows us to say we would raise the sewer fees, or the stormwater fees, excuse me, to be able to match what our needs are to clean up the water, because there's no way that we're going to be able to go time and time again to the voters, who I think would be for this. But the difference here, folks, because this is a rare thing in government, instead of paying by a credit card, which is what these bonds are, we actually get to pay cash. So we're not paying almost twice as much just on interest payments to investors. We can actually pour all of this literally into clean water projects. So I think it's very important for us to have a very strong voice on this. We led not only the state but the country with Proposition O. It was the largest clean water bond at the local level for stormwater in the nation's history. But we can't go back to that well over and over again. It is now time for us to be able to have a mechanism to allow other counties and cities, which are part of our watershed too, and throughout the state, to be able to do what's right and to finally clean up the water to make it healthy and safe for drinking again, and in doing so, be able to sustain the growth of the state. So I very strongly rise in support of this, and let's get up to Sacramento and ensure that 2/3 of the legislature gets this on the ballot, and a majority vote would change that law statewide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. And no other speakers. Madam Clerk, open the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Next item. Forthwith, as requested, Mr. Weiss.
If we come back, I know we were waiting on item number 18 for Mr. Zine, who's now with us. Mr. Zine, Mr. Parks deferred to you on item 18. So I'd like to recognize you on item 18, Mr. Zine.
Thank you, Mr. President. On item number 18, Mr. Assistant City Attorney is sitting there wondering what I'm going to do with this. We're going to make a verbal motion on item 18. This deals with deferred comp and the board that governs deferred comp. In the verbal motion, I move that the ordinance before us be revised to delete the requirement that the 4 ex officio plan board members be participants in the plan. And I need to get a second. And with that amendment, we would then move the matter on item number 18. Mr. President, I think we ought to open the roll.
A friendly amendment, Mr. Parks?
Yes.
All right, Ms. Perry? Did you want Ms. Perry's speaker cues on? I think that's from an earlier. Oh, I'm sorry. That was from an earlier item. So let's go ahead and open the roll on this one. Close the roll and tabulate the vote. That is approved.
That's with the amendment.
As amended.
Thank you. All right,
okay.
Thank you.
All righty. And next item, please.
Next item is item 23, and that was called special by Councilmember Parks.
Mr. Parks. Item 23.
That's going to be continued, I think. Mr.
Okay,
Reyes
you
was
agreed on the
asking-
continuation?
Yeah,
okay,
we'll continue.
Great. So that's for 1 week was the continuation? Do we have?
June 29th, I believe.
June 29th. Okay, without objection, we'll continue until then. Next item, please.
Next item is item number 26, and that was called special, and there are also cards. It was called special by the council president.
For Mr. Weezar. Is Mr. Okay, Mr. Reyes?
Yes, I believe Councilman Weezar, this is in his district. Can we hold this to make sure he's
Sure.
here?
We'll
So that
hold
give
that
him
on
the
the table.
courtesy as a council member of the district.
No problem. Next item, please.
Next item is item number 32, and that was called special by Councilmember Hahn.
Okay, Ms. Hahn, item number 32.
Let's see, 32. Oh, yes. Yes, I actually had a substitute motion that I was passing out. Here it is. Colleagues, this is about safe passage, which I've talked enough about to know that there are so many of our kids in parts of our city who are literally unsafe walking to and from school. In fact, they are so fearful that many kids don't attend school because the fear, which is a very real fear, of being beaten up or jumped or harassed on their way to and from school. So safe passage is a way that the city has really stepped in to fill that gap, spent money, making sure our kids can walk safely to and from school. I've always challenged the school district to help us a little bit with that. It's their schools and it's their students, and I've really wanted them to kind of help us. They're always constrained in their budget as well. But the good news, and why I'm introducing a substitute motion, is that LAUSD District 7 local superintendent told me that they've received a $60,000 grant from the federal government to expand the existing Safe Passage program at Markham Middle School. And Markham Middle School is in Watts, and it's one of my middle schools that is a very still dangerous place to before school, after school. So since they have identified $60,000 for Markham, I would like to substitute this motion to say that we identify $25,000 that can be used to extend the funding for Jordan High School Safe Passage for additional 90 days, because we were told in the last committee that Jordan High School would not be receiving Safe Passage funds. So that's what I'm doing here today, just trying to keep my kids safe walking to and from school, so I hope you'll support this substitute motion.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Without objection, that'll be accepted as a friendly amendment. Or, as a substitute. And let's go ahead and open the roll. Close the roll. Please tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. And Ms. Hahn, we're going to go straight into your next item, I think 42, if you'd like to take that up.
42.
On the evaluation of social service and gang prevention.
Right. Is there somebody from the controller's office here? Controller staff? Great. Come on down. Colleagues, and it's great that our new gang czar, Jeffrey Carr, is here. At this time, I was just saying it was great that our new gang deputy czar, or gang czar, Jeffrey Carr, is here today. This is an item that I think is very critical, colleagues, as we move forward with our comprehensive strategy. Bill, let him listen. Comprehensive strategy on ending gang violence in the city of Los Angeles. And as you know, we in the city of Los Angeles have been criticized that sometimes we're funding programs that don't produce results. And we can't just keep throwing money at gang prevention, intervention, programs that are not working. So as we are trying to have a comprehensive strategy with the new gang czar on board, it's very important to the residents of Los Angeles, the voters of Los Angeles, the taxpayers of Los Angeles, that we audit our existing gang prevention, intervention, after-school programs, so that when we then appropriate new monies we know whether or not these programs are producing the results. Laura Chick, our controller, had agreed that this was a role the controller should play. And then we found ourselves in a bit of a budget issue, and we hadn't really appropriated the money that she needed to audit these programs. So this item will appropriate $500,000 so that our controller can analyze our current anti-gang programs, so that when we do move forward, we can tell the voters, we can build that trust back up of the residents of Los Angeles that, in fact, our programs actually are getting results. They're efficient, they're economical, and they're using our money as wisely as possible to keep our kids from joining gangs in the first place. So, don't know if you want to comment on maybe a timeline on when we think these programs could be analyzed. And the other thing I was going to ask, if the controller would take into consideration analysis or audits of programs that have already taken place. For instance, LA Best has a federal study that has analyzed LA's Best, and then the Gang Alternative Program, GAP, also has an evaluation underway. And how can our controller kind of take ones that have already happened and either give her approval so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel on some of the programs that are being analyzed?
Certainly. Good morning, Councilmember. Ron Rushmore Cervantes with the Controller's Office. The Controller is very interested in conducting this analysis. This is both not just anti-gang programs, but also the social services program, because they're both very much interlinked. We do not want to duplicate any existing or prior studies that have been conducted. We first of all want to acknowledge the fact that there was a tremendous report that was produced by Connie Rice. We want to dovetail onto that report and take a look at all of the existing programs that are currently in place now and try to perform a study as far as how they've performed. That's not going to be that easy because each of these units, each of these companies have been gathering data on a different manner. So it's really hard for us to be able to gather that data and be able to come up with a comprehensive analysis. We are going to be able to, what we're going to do is look at all of the data that's been collected by these organizations and come forward not only with what services are out there, also determine what they've delivered, but also be able to come forward with best practices to how we can move forward from this point going forward with any type of new programs so that we can gauge the effectiveness and efficiencies of these organizations as they move forward. Those organizations, but also the programs, so that we can truly have understanding if we're meeting the needs of the community. And that'll be very helpful as we go out to an RFP, the city moves forward with modifications to this program and awards contracts. We need to basically know how those federal monies are being spent as well as local dollars so that we can maximize those dollars and maybe look at other efficiencies that are through other city offices or departments services, but also what's going on with the LA Unified as well as the county. So we want to look at it from a holistic approach and how we're going to deal with the gang program. As it relates to what LA's Best is, their study, we want to look at all the reports that are out there so we're not duplicating any type of efforts that are already there. We want to gather all the information that's out there as possible and not reinvent the wheel so we can come forward with a comprehensive report and analysis that will be helpful for the council and the mayor to be able to move forward with this important initiative.
Can we expect her to, besides talking about whether or not they're working or not, can we expect her to recommend that maybe some of these programs be expanded?
No, we're not going to be coming forward with any type of data that will say this program's working, this one's not working. We just basically want to be able to demonstrate this is the efficiencies that they have. These are the programs they're providing. This is how they're doing it, and it's really going to be something that it'll be a policy decision for the mayor and council moving forward how they want to interpret that data.
We'll have that information.
You'll have that
still be up to us to decide.
Right. Well, you have that information. Plus, we'll also give the mayor and council tools or a plan to be able to track it in the future. So you'll have information on the existing programs, but also moving forward, you'll be able to, we're going to give you proposals on how you can gauge services moving forward.
Okay, obviously time is of the essence. I realize this is going to be difficult. But we are being very careful about reappropriating dollars to existing programs until we have this final analysis from the Comptroller's Office. As you know, I'm still moving forward with trying to put something on the ballot in February that would bring in more revenue to the City of Los Angeles to spend on gang prevention, intervention, after-school programs. So we really need this to be done certainly right, but we want it to be done as quickly as possible because we are, I still think we have a crisis in terms of gang violence in Los Angeles. So we need to get this study back from the Comptroller so then we can make the decisions on how to fund programs going on. What's your time?
Well, we understand the urgency. At the same time, we're also cognizant of the fact we want to deliver quality product.
Right.
We're looking probably mid to late January.
Excellent. Excellent. Good news. Okay. Well, we were happy to do this for the Comptroller. We really want her to be a part of this. We think it's critical to evaluate these programs. We also think it's critical to get the trust of Los Angeles that we are spending our money on programs that are reducing gang violence in Los Angeles.
We could also go forthwith so we can expedite this
Yes.
process.
Right. We will do that. So, colleagues, I hope I get an aye vote on this, and then after we vote, I'll move it forthwith.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Hahn. Go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That is approved. Forthwith without objection on that. If we go to item 46 next, please.
Item 46 was called special by Councilmember Zine.
Dennis P. Zine.
Thank you, Mr. President. Item number 46 deals with animal services, and we have the director and his staff. But folks, if you'll come forward, please. And do you have an overview on this?
I do.
Okay. We're going to turn over to the General Manager of Animal Services for a presentation.
Thank you, Councilmember Zine. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Council. I want to particularly thank Councilmember Zine and Cardenas for making the motion, allowing me to be here this morning to share with you some of the things that have been occurring in animal services over the last year and a half, and to address any concerns that you may have. The motion specifically asks that I comment on our success with lowering the kill rate and increasing our volunteer and enhancing our volunteer program. What we are doing in the Department of Animal Services is trying to broaden our program beyond the figurative four walls of our department and really reach out into the community and create what we call a true humane society, or a humane LA. And some of the ways that we are doing that, and I have to turn this on. Thank you. Let's see if I got this. Okay. Here we go. All right. So if we're trying to create, one of the reasons I was recruited to come to Los Angeles was to help in transforming LA into the first major municipal no-kill community in the United States. And oftentimes I'm asked, well, what is the measure? How can we tell when we have really achieved no-kill or truly achieved the status of a humane community? And through the ages, there's been many who have opined. I think St. Francis of Assisi was the first who drew the link between animal cruelty and domestic violence. Abraham Lincoln once said that I care nothing for any man's religion whose dog or cat aren't better for it. But one of the quotes that you will often hear in the animal welfare community across the United States today is the true measure is the greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated, and that was by Mahatma Gandhi. So how are we doing in the city of Los Angeles? And I think just to compare what we're doing in the city of Los Angeles to, say, the state of California as a whole, as you know, during our AB 1634 presentation, we shared with you that nearly 1 million animals are going into animal control shelters across the United States every year, and more than half of them are being killed. In the city of Los Angeles, however, 46,000 dogs and cats are taken into our animal control centers each year. and over 18,000 are killed. That's about a 40% kill rate, much lower than the state average. This particular slide, I think, is of most importance because, and I've highlighted the communities that our critics like to compare us to, and it shows how many animals are being killed per 1,000 residents each year. And this is probably the most scientific way of evaluating and looking at no-kill and our progress. And something that should be said is that when you get to 5.0, there are many in the community or many in the animal welfare field who opine that that is the threshold for achieving no-kill, that there will always be dangerously aggressive animals and terminally sick and injured animals that will require to be euthanized. As you can see by this, the national average, which is in red in the right-hand column, is 14.8. The city of Los Angeles is at 4.5, which is lower than the 5.0 threshold. And the only cities lower than that on this slide, there are others, but it's New York City, Santa Cruz, which is the model for AB 1634, and San Francisco. Also noteworthy is San Francisco. The Bay Area is actually at 7.1, which has a higher kill rate than the city of Los Angeles. So what I am delighted to report to you is that over the last 5 years, Los Angeles has seen a 50% decline in euthanasia in our shelters. This is the most rapid decline in killing of any major city in the United States. This year to date, from January to the end of May, we have seen an additional 22% decline. And to date, in the month of June, we have seen another 32% decline. So clearly we are on the right track to minimizing euthanasia as a methodology for controlling pet overpopulation. And if I can share with you, just over the last 12 months, and this is from June 1st, 2006 through May 31st, 2007, 18,108 dogs and cats were killed. This is the lowest number of animals killed in the city of Los Angeles in a 12-month period in our history. So it is quite a landmark. And it is our intention to continue to reduce that number. Noteworthy is that 64% of all the animals that were euthanized are cats. For every one dog we euthanize 2 cats. 36%, of course, then are dogs, 6,541. Keep in mind, this is in a community of 4 million people. Of the cats killed, 5,020 were orphan neonate kittens. These are kittens that cannot survive on their own, and they come to us as orphans. And we have a very robust foster program that has helped us reduce our euthanasia rate amongst neonates, and I'll be talking about that in a few seconds. And then of all the dogs killed, 2,647 were pit bull or pit bull mixes. So 40%, nearly half of all the dogs that are dying in our shelters are pit bulls or pit bull mixes, or that's 15% of the total kill rate. It should also be noted that the number one dog breed that we adopt out in the city of Los Angeles is also pit bulls. So it's very, very popular, as well as a very, very dominant breed with respect to population presence. So how to achieve no-kill? There are 2 approaches to achieving no-kill. Certainly one is tactical solutions, and that is pet adoption and pet retention programs. One particularly noteworthy program is the City Council's Adopt a Pet, hosted and sponsored by Councilmember Wesson. 100% of the animals that come to the City Council have been adopted, oftentimes before they ever have a chance to leave these walls, leave this room. But the ancillary benefit is there are hundreds, if not thousands, of Angelinos who see those adoptions and then come down to our shelters and adopt out additional animals. So as you can see from this graph, our placement in homes of lost and homeless dogs and cats continues to rise. And the last 12 months, we've placed in the neighborhood of nearly 22,000 dogs and cats, making Los Angeles Animal Services the #1 pet adoption agency in the world. To the best of our knowledge, there is no agency placing more animals into loving homes than Animal Services. And strategic solutions include spay-neuter programs. Legislation, historically, we've seen the Hayden Bill and the Vincent Bills was a strategic legislation to help us reduce euthanasia, and the creation of humane animal care centers. If I can just share a little bit about the tactical programs. When I first started with LA Animal Services a year and a half ago, we had a very loosely defined pet adoption program with about 50 different organizations. We have tightened that up and enhanced it to provide extraordinary services to our New Hope partners, and the program has tripled. We now have about 150 New Hope partners who help us place in the neighborhood of 7,000 animals a year. Operation Felix, this is a program that many of you may be interested in your particular districts. It deals with feral cats. We're in the process of working with the Department of General Services, the Harbor, several police stations, areas where there are known rat problems. Feral cats are a very, very adept rat abatement program, and it would help us in addressing the kill rates. About 1/3 of all the cats that we kill in our shelters are feral cats, and they could be serving a real useful purpose in our communities. The STAR program is a program, Special Treatment and Recovery, that allows residents whose hearts are tugged by many of the animals who come into our shelters with medical needs to provide funding through the way of donations to give those animals the care and the treatment that they need. Foster programs, as I mentioned, we're taking in the neighborhood of 1,000 neonate kittens and puppies every month from the month of April to September. We've recruited over 60 foster care parents in the last couple of months and have been able to reduce our neonate death rate by about 60%. Off-site adoption events, I think, speak for themselves. Many people have a hard time coming to an animal control shelter and are much more easily disposed to adopting from a park or a church parking lot or a synagogue or some public event, street event, something of that sort. So we have many, many adoption events to help get these animals placed. Our volunteer program, we have over 300 active volunteers. We've reorganized our volunteer program so that we actually have a volunteer liaison in each one of our centers who are reaching out to the surrounding community to help us with pet adoption events and increase adoption and other partnering efforts. Licensing and microchipping, I want to specifically thank the City Council for your support as well as the Mayor's Office in putting our license canvassing program back into our program and funding it this year. And we do believe and have made a commitment to you and to the Mayor that as a result of your faith in us in putting that funding back in, that you will see results and our licensing numbers will go up. It should be noted that animal control, because of our licensing program and our microchipping program, returns 4 times more pets to their frantic owners than any other large municipal shelter in the United States, about 4,500 a year, which is really extraordinary. Canine Court is a program that we're working with the City Attorney's Office on. We take in over 2,000 barking dog and aggressive dog complaints in the city of Los Angeles. Many of these cases can be adjudicated in a mediation setting as opposed to a hearing setting. And this is a program we're very excited about. Channel 35 will be carrying some of these episodes where we will help to solve the problems at the lowest level and through mediation, which is typically win-win for everybody. We're also looking at a Pit Bull Academy at our South LA. As I said, 40% of all the dogs in our shelters that are dying are Pit Bulls. This Pit Bull Academy will help us to identify the true ambassadors of the breed so that we can get them placed properly into homes with people who understand the differences between the Pit Bull and and other dog breeds. And Safety Net is another program. I'm meeting with some community organizations tomorrow, as a matter of fact, and we're redesigning a page on our website to put all of the resources in Los Angeles in one easy-to-find location so that if people want to keep their pets, they can find the resources, whether it's dog trainers, behavioralists, counsel, attorneys, landlords, whoever, whatever the issue can be, they can find the help they need so that they can keep their pet as opposed to relinquishing it to a shelter. Some of the strategic programs, this is a program that I'm very, very interested in, and it's called Humane LA. I think we're surrounded by so many initiatives. We have anti-crime, anti-gang, anti-poverty, anti-violence. What Humane LA does is it portrays the best of Los Angeles. What are we for? We are for humane practice and policies. And what we have done is we've pulled together a task force of over 25 city departments. We've identified point of service deliveries where we can share information with residents of the community, getting away from the silo approach of delivering service. And when a woman comes in for vaccinations for her infants, she can also at the same time receive information on licensing, microchipping, and spaying and neutering the family pet at no charge because of our voucher programs. Through Humane LA, we'll be working with the anti-gang efforts and other efforts in the community. So this is a report that we're going to be presenting to the mayor in the next few weeks, and it's a program that I'm hoping that LA will embrace, and it will become a real signature program because it is something that can be duplicated and replicated in other communities across the United States.
Mr. Boakes, just as a time check, we have 2 members that are excused at 12 and 3 members who are excused to be out, so we're going to have a quorum issue if we can maybe try to wrap things up a little bit more quickly.
Just to go through it very quickly then, other strategic initiatives includes our Big Fix program, just so that you can see the LA's commitment to spay-neuter is extraordinary. No matter how you look at it, no other city can match it. $1.2 million a year. We did 38,000 spay-neuter surgeries last year. We're on track to do 45,000 this coming year. As I testified the last time I was here, building $160 million in Prop F spay-neuter clinics is a very, very expensive but noble way of trying to attempt to deal with the Hayden provision of holding animals for longer periods of time. The spay-neuter programs are much more pointed and targeted, and these facilities will then be able to be used for animals in real serious needs. And then, of course, legislation, AB 1634 has passed the Assembly. It's on its way to the Senate, and we're also working with Councilmember Alarcon and Cardenas and Wesson's office on developing a spay-neuter ordinance for the city of Los Angeles. And these are just a listing of other programs and services, and I won't get into them too much, except that maybe the pet of the day, if you go to the mayor's office or website or animal services website, you will see a pet of the day feature on there, and that is every time somebody clicks on your website, a different animal that's up for adoption will show on the screen, and it takes up very little real estate on your front screen, and all the directions for putting that on your website are available. And that has helped tremendously. There are organizations and corporations across the city that are using it, and the report back is people will come to their website every day just to see a picture of an animal. So it's a very powerful program. Many of our services can be found on laanimalservices.com. And just in reviewing our mission and vision statements is to promote and protect the health, safety, and welfare of animals and people in the city of Los Angeles. We envision the day when every pet born is ensured a good home and care all its natural life, and no animal will suffer because of abuse, neglect, or ignorance, and all citizens, their property, and neighborhoods are safe from the dangers and nuisances of irresponsible pet guardianship. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zine. And then after that, we have Mr. Rosendahl and Mr. LaBonge.
A few questions of issues that have come to my attention. Staffing, that you don't have enough vets. You're down to one vet, is that correct?
We actually have 2 veterinarians right now. One is on vacation, will be leaving when she returns, but we have a veterinarian who just started today. So the status quo remains. We have 2 vets. We have another vet who may be starting within a few days. We have 5 additional vets who will be interviewing in the next few days. And again, as I have pointed out to others, we do have 22 staff members who are licensed veterinarians in other countries who bring a deep appreciation of veterinary medicine to their positions, help us identify animals in need. And we have 30 contract veterinarians in the community that we can get those animals to as quickly as possible. So the animals in our shelters are receiving very, very fine and good veterinary care.
So you have sufficient vets with the contracting out and what you have in-house?
We have vacancies, and we are looking to fill those vacancies, but because
how many vacancies do you have?
We put into the budget 12 vacancies, but keep in mind that 6 of those for spay-neuter clinics that will not now, that we have learned since then won't open until next year. So we really only need 6 veterinarians. We'll have 3 in the next few days, and we should be up to 6 within the next month or 2. And we do have 30 veterinarians in the community that we partner with.
And the kill rate, I've heard controversy regarding the kill rate, that our rate is down because we're warehousing these animals and we're not adopting them. And the East Valley Shelter, I've been told, is already past capacity. And I understand a memo went out that you're not accepting any more cats, if that's correct. Can you discuss that?
That is not correct. Nothing could be further from the truth. As I mentioned, we're receiving 1,000 neonate kittens a month. We're receiving hundreds of cats. So we are and will always continue to receive cats. So I'm not sure where that came from. With respect to our adoptions...
Have you heard that? That
no.
The shelter wasn't going to receive any more animals?
We have recently altered our receiving hours, but there is absolutely no preclusion of people bringing us cats at any time.
Just the hours are restricted?
The hours were limited, and let me be clear, Animal Services will never, ever refuse an animal. The reduction in hours was merely to alert the public that if you really love your animal and feel that you're forced to relinquish it, it has a much better chance of being adopted if you bring it to us Tuesday through Friday, because we have many adoption events on the weekend, and we also adopt out more animals from our shelters on the weekend. So if you bring us your animals on the weekend, it will have to languish at least 7 days before an adoption event. So we're encouraging people to bring us the animals during the week so that we can rehome them as quickly as possible. But if people can't or refuse to bring their animals back during those hours, we will not turn them away.
And you mentioned the kill rate that we're at now. In the last 5 years, since you've been in charge, the general manager, has the rate continued to go on down? Your predecessors responsible for setting this trend, and you've continued that?
To be sure, the low-hanging fruit over the last 5 years has been picked. We are down, as you see by the numbers, to housing primarily pit bulls and pit bull mixes, neonate kittens, and feral cats, animals that are a challenge to adopt by anybody. Despite that, last year we had nearly a 7% decrease in the euthanasia rate, and last year was a very difficult year for a variety of reasons. This year, to date, we've reduced the euthanasia rate by 22%, and so far in June we're down 32%. Now, I'm sensitive to the concern of overcrowding, and Animal Services walks this fine line. If we euthanize too many animals to make space, we're a death camp. If we house too many animals because we want to lower the kill rate, we're concentration camps. I don't think either is the case. I think we make very judicious and compassionate decisions every single day. We're about to introduce a brand new program called HART, H-A-R-T, in which 4 employees will be required in making a decision whether or not to euthanize an animal. And we'll be looking at everything from behavior to medical condition to population of the shelters to a rescue partner's ability to come and get the animal. A lot will go into making that decision. And I think that's extraordinary for a municipal shelter to be deliberating with that kind of scrutiny over every animal that we're going to be euthanizing.
The issue of 18,108 dogs and cats that go through euthanasia, obviously people are not being responsible as they should be, and I think we need to emphasize that over and over. Another matter that I saw on the board that wasn't really discussed in detail was coyotes. In my district we have a big problem with coyotes, the concern from the residents in areas east of here, near Glendora. They've got bears that are coming down because of the drought, etc. I don't know if we have any bears yet in this area, but I know we've got coyotes and bobcats, etc. can you address the coyote issue and any activity taking place to try and limit that invasion into the neighborhoods?
That is a very difficult situation, and I actually wrote an article for the LA Times that's available on our website with respect to state law when it comes to coyotes, and that is that they can't be relocated and they can't be shot.
They can be shot or can't?
They cannot be trapped or relocated, and they can't be shot unless there's an exposure of some type, if there's a concern for rabies. Like it, and I am so open to discussing this and coming up with strategies and changing the state statute if needed. But in Los Angeles, as it was in New York and in Arizona, my philosophy has always been this is our natural heritage, and there has to be a way that we can learn to live together without endangering the public, but by educating the public that these animals, if left alone, are wonderful Kodak moments in our neighborhoods, but if you leave them alone, they will go home on their own.
Well, they may be going home. Their home is people's backyards, and we get a lot of complaints regarding their small dogs that are now gone because I'm sure the coyotes are dining on people's pets. That's a concern that is come to my attention.
Excuse me, Mr. Stein. I believe we're off topic from the youth.
No, we're not. We're still on the topic. We're on the topic of animal services, and we're talking about animal services, and coyotes are part of animals.
Is that what's written on the agenda?
Yeah.
I don't think
Look
so.
at that agenda.
I think
Take your
the agenda's
glass
on
off and clean your glasses.
But even if we are on topic, you're over time. So
well, that's okay. See, you got to take the right attack. So I'm over time. We need to get together on some of the coyote issues up in the Santa Monica Mountain.
I promise you, I will get with you.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, you still got your critics that keep on bombarding us with emails and calls. So we try to serve every need and every purpose. And I know it's a daunting task. So
right. And I think the more that the city council and the entire community really becomes aware that we are dealing with a very small number of vocal critics, who we constantly are opening the door to try to have some dialogue with, but they're not wanting to work with us. They would rather attack. So I appreciate your understanding.
We have Mr. Rosendahl, Mr. Labange, and Mr. Smith. And just a reminder, folks, that we have two people who are excused at noon, so we'll be down to a bare quorum. Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate your report. It was a great report, and you've really shown great leadership with this department. Here are the two big questions, okay? Ready. Spade and neutering. We were wrong when we said 4 months. The animal is not developed enough as an animal to truly be able to be spaded or neutered. I've learned that since we as a great council took action without knowing what we were doing, I might add. We said 4 months works. Now, the state law is looking at modifying the law. Veterinarians have been calling me. People who love their dogs have been calling me. Tell me where we can take this 4-month idea and be more appreciative of the animal and its own natural development.
Right. With all due respect, I don't believe that we were wrong, but living in a democratic process, we are always willing to compromise. The opponents of AB 1634 have been very, very busy in digging up reports that are years and years old on the 4-month issue. The American Veterinary Medical Association has a public opinion that the earlier the spay-neuter occurs, the healthier it is for the animal. California Veterinary Medical Association has also had that opinion, but you are quite right. There is a need for compromise, and it is my understanding that there is an amendment moving through Sacramento that will change AB 1634 from 4 months to 6 months. Mm-hmm. That's at least part of the discussion and the debate right now.
And the other part of that discussion is veterinarians might be able to work with this law that might give owners the opportunity not to spay or neuter until they're a year old.
The California Veterinary Medical Association is one of the sponsors, so they have been working with this law from the beginning. And yes, that is also part of an amendment under discussion, is that in addition to raising the bar from 4 months to 6 months, the possibility of allowing veterinarians to say, add another 6 months to that, which was part of the original law. The veterinarian could have done that as it was originally written, but this is much clearer.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And it wasn't like my colleagues or myself didn't we're just learning as we do this all the time. And out of respect, I went to a fair at my Westchester lot there, and there were hundreds of people there, and they were adopting dogs and cats and rabbits, and there was a tremendous spirit among people in the adoption business that I just found extremely exciting. I much rather see dogs and cats adopted than put down, and rabbits as well. Absolutely. And that there is a lot of energy in our city and in our state. Every time Weston goes there with a little pooch and somebody takes it home, I'm thrilled, because I'd rather see that animal in a loving home than anywhere else. Okay. The second issue has to do with the licensing. What percentage of our dogs are licensed?
Well, it's difficult to know what population of dogs we have in the community. There are two formulas out there. One would say that there are 400,000 and the other is 800,000. So if you say 400,000, then we're at about 25%. And if you say 800,000, we're at about 10% or so or less.
So talk about the strategy you're using that we in the Budget Committee put your money back in to go out and get all these dogs licensed.
Well, for the first time, we're going to be able to address this in a very serious way. For the last couple of years, we've been addressing it in a rather ad hoc, throwing extra people into this. Actually just met with our team yesterday and coming up with a strategy that will be much more systematic in addressing problem areas in our community where we know animals are running at large and are unlicensed, to follow up on not only those animals, but also if you look at the LA Times or any other newspaper in the LA area at any given time, there are tens of thousands of dollars worth of animals being bought and sold in the city of Los Angeles every day. So we're going to be much more aggressive at following up on those and making sure that those animals either have a breeder's permit or are properly licensed.
Will you give us a report back every few months on how we're moving forward aggressively on licensing?
Would be delighted to. I'm very excited about this program, in fact.
So am I, and I think it's a great program you're putting in place. As the summer progresses, we talk about gangs, we talk about prevention and intervention, all this good stuff. This is a good intervention strategy for teenage kids.
Absolutely.
14 years and above. We should deputize them in some sort of a way that they can bang on the doors and find out who has dogs with a sweet smile, and they can get them into the process.
Right.
If these teenagers are out there as part of their summer job program, it is an apprenticeship program. It's keeping them out of gangs and drugs, and they do a tremendous service if we could make this program happen with teenagers.
And that is actually part of our overall Humane LA approach of integrating so many of the services we have available under this umbrella of how do we create a more humane society.
The last question is, what city in the country has a larger percentage, like 50% or 60% of their dogs licensed? Do you know?
I'm not aware of any city in the country that Maricopa County, which is a community that I managed several years ago, had I believe a 30 or 35% rate, which was considered one of the highest in the nation. Calgary, Canada, I believe, has a higher rate, maybe about 50% or so. But licensing is there may be models out there that communities out there I'm not aware of, but licensing is. Though I will tell you, those communities that do have a robust canvassing program do have higher licensing rates.
Yeah, and so let's have a more aggressive canvassing program, number one. Let's look at good practices, best practices of Calgary, Canada, and other places, and let's get our stats, be they 10% or 25%, to over 50%. Let's give kids jobs, and let's get all of the animals within the process of licensing. And thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Mr. Lavange.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barth. Mr. Boakes, good to see you. How many animals in Los Angeles?
Well, again, we have no way of knowing.
Well, I want you to find out next time you come here, because there's nothing in your report. I would like to know there's maybe 5,000 horses, 20,000
well, if you're asking how many are licensed, I can tell you that. But if you're asking how many are out there there are, as I just mentioned to Councilmember
It
Rosendahl.
would be helpful in your report, which was very good, and I'm trying to be fast because we've been long on this, is to get a one sheet of how many animals are here. That's been real important. Number two, veterans are very important, and also vets are important. More vets. Let us know when you're short. Volunteers, how many volunteers in your department?
We have over 300 active volunteers.
300 active volunteers.
And that's not counting our Boster program where we have about 60.
In your report that you gave there, you said some equation to concentration camps. Did you hear that?
Yeah, well,
I think you should be real cautious when you use that term because it's very, very deep and serious to many people in this city.
And I understand, and that is not something, I was quoting what our critics are saying about us.
I understand. No, just that's something so solemn there. And lastly, I say that this is about euthanasia. And why do you say kill so much in your report? Why do you say euthanasia instead of kill?
That is a...
Because you sound like a slaughterhouse, like a meatpacking house in Commerce.
This is a philosophical issue. I do have a commission who prefers that I use the word kill. I prefer the word euthanasia. I'm open to using either.
Yeah, tell them to use euthanasia. I think it just sounds kill. We're trying to prevent killing. Anyway, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Bopes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes.
Mr. Reyes?
Thank you. I think I should have took you upon that question there, Tom. I could have. You went past 30. Call for the question, please.
All right. If there's no objection, that will end the debate on this. Let's go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Thank you. You'll receive and file that. And next we'll return to item number 24. Is that the right number? 26, excuse me. 26, and recognize the chair of our Plum Committee, Mr. Reyes.
Yeah, do you? Thank you, Council President.
Good.
I know we're pressured for time, so I wanted to be as brief as possible. This is a project that has been very controversial in the Northeast. It's a project that I was able to sit in the first committee meeting at Plum. I missed the second one. I was in Sacramento working on our waste management issues. But on that first hearing, we were able to address some of the concerns we had in terms of its impact. I can share with you, colleagues, that from the first vote back in 2004, I voted against the project because I strongly felt that the conditions that were set with the subdivision were inadequate. I felt the impacts were much more severe than what was being recommended. And as such, I stand with that record, and I'll be consistent with that vote back in 2004. But I'd like to ask the city family to come to the table. Our city engineer, our city attorney, our building and safety, to answer a couple of questions, please. Back in 2004, when I voted no against this project, I was very concerned with the watershed issues. I was very concerned with the density issues. I was very concerned with the impact on our environment, given the limited amount of open space we already have in Northeast. But if there are certain legal realities that were pointed out in committee, and can you define those, please?
The legal issue that we're looking at is whether or not under CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, additional environmental review has been triggered for the project, which has been approved subject to a certified environmental impact report previously. And in order...
Can you give us the date when it was approved?
I can't give you the exact date, but I believe it was 1993.
1993.
In order to trigger the investigation, the factual inquiry into whether additional environmental review is triggered, you have to have a pending discretionary approval for the project, where the project has already been approved subject to a certified EIR. So that was the first question that we looked at, whether or not there's a pending discretionary approval at this point in time. Then we looked at the legal triggers under CEQA Section 21166 and the State CEQA Guideline 15162, which sets forth the standard, the factual standard and showing that needs to be made in order to trigger the requirement for additional environmental review once you've already completed the CEQA review process.
Okay. The city engineer, when we met the first time, I'd asked you the question if you had worked on a project this size in an area like Northeast, and what was your answer there?
And my answer is no, we haven't worked on one this size in the Northeast area.
Okay. And given that assertion, I was very uncomfortable as to how we were using our discretion and what we were requiring of this project. When I look at some of the analysis, my understanding is that Pullman Street follows an alignment of a natural water course in this location.
That's correct.
And that the impact of that imposition is not part of the original footprint.
Could you repeat the question?
The footprint that we approved did not include the additional imposition given the requirements we set on Pullman.
The track description included the construction of Pullman Avenue and followed along the alignment of Pullman.
Correct. And my contention is that these requirements have an additional impact on our area given the condition of a watershed, given the fact that there is an alignment of a natural water course in this location. But I'm being told by the city attorney that those are requirements that were set by the city and that we are now in a dilemma given what was granted back in 1993 and what was approved back in 2004. Am I correct?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure we understand the question, Council Member.
At this point, we are looking at a project that was given certain requirements and conditions, correct?
That's correct.
And that was defined back in 2004?
Those conditions were actually defined back in 1993 and subsequently modified to the state that the track was approved in 2004, yes.
And you're basing it on how the codes currently define how we behave as a city when projects are proposed of this size?
That's correct.
Okay. And that is where I strongly differ, given the amount of time that has changed, the amount of time that has passed, the changes that have occurred, the impacts in our natural resources given our watershed issues. And unfortunately, we are told that we can't not change what we've already granted back in 1993. Legally. Correct?
The legal standard that I outlined would have to be met. And in this case, the city attorney's office has evaluated the situation and concluded that there is no pending discretionary approval with regard to the B permit application. So your initial requirement to have a pending discretionary approval does not exist here. So legally, you wouldn't be required to go on to the additional factual inquiry into whether additional environmental review is required under CEQA.
Okay. There are many other hillsides and ridges that exist in the city. But Northeast in particular, there's few and precious little space we have. I'll be moving next council meeting with a motion to discuss and evaluate how we're making these decisions to avoid an impact of this type that we are right now going through, given how much time has lagged, how we include impacts, and how we define impacts. And unfortunately, this was not done back in the early 90s. I voted against this project back in 2004, and I will continue to do that today. Thank you.
Mr. Huizar is our next speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I actually had brought a motion a few months back to examine whether or not a supplemental environmental impact report would be required on this project. The reason I did that is because there was a number of constituents, a number of residents that live near the project, and around the El Sereno community that were concerned that they were not being given the time to explain what exactly was happening and whether or not a supplemental environmental impact report would be required. And since then, I think the departments have done a fabulous job in being responsive. They've sat down a number of times with our constituents, with myself, to go through this project and figure out if, in fact, a supplemental environmental impact report would be required. We are right now at a difference of opinion, however. We went through Plum a few times, and it's come down to, I think, two requirements as to whether a supplemental impact report is required. One is whether there is any discretionary action, and second, even given if there is a discretionary action, if that would raise to the level, the city attorney could correct me if I'm wrong, that there is additional new information or addition to the project, something like that, right? And I, in Plum, asked that we move this item forward and that we require a supplemental environmental impact report, because I did believe that even though the city attorney has mentioned there is not a discretionary approval under a permit B, that there was some flexibility. And today, one of the attorneys for the Natural Resources Defense Council actually submitted a letter which outlines or suggests a code where the permit, it could be argued that the permit B is a discretionary approval. So if I could ask the city attorney, if you had, I think you had told us to look at the Municipal Code 62.106B, but the NRDC points to 62.105B, not 106, but 105B. Have you looked at 105B and whether or not that would allow us to interpret whether the permit, B permits are in fact discretionary? Please hold my time.
Yes, our office has looked at all the citations that we've received in various letters with regard to the ministerial discretionary issue, and we have continued to conclude that the B permit for this tract project is ministerial.
Even under that new section, because you cite 106B, but the NRDC is citing 105B.
That's right. It doesn't change our conclusion.
And why not?
Susan Fan is going to address that.
Susan Fan, City Attorney. The two sections work together. 106B actually sorts these types of permits into A permits and B permits. 105 is the actual permit requiring section. That's the one that was cited by the NRDC. These permits are actually being sought under 62105A, subparagraph A. They're called B permits, but they're under subsection A of that code section. And that's the section we were always talking about. The 106 one was simply a how to name the permit. The meat of the discussion is in 62105. But we looked at all the letters that the NRDC has cited. We've looked at their case law. We've looked at the code sections they've cited and the arguments that we've made, and we disagree with them. We believe that based on our own CEQA guidelines, on the code sections we've cited before, on the way the department implements these code sections, that in this case it is a ministerial action. The discretion occurred back when the track map was approved. What's happening right now is the implementing of those discretionary actions. The B permit, we do not believe, is discretionary within the meaning of CEQA.
The B permit is required to build a public access road to this development. It's a pretty significant public access road. It goes quite a bit of distance. I'm not good with distance, but it goes quite a bit of distance. And wouldn't there be some type of conditions when they build this road such that it would require some debate, discussion, some discretionary approval for this road, and it's not just a ministerial road? Because if we ask somebody to build a road, we don't just say build that road. We say let's discuss, let's deliberate with you what we would like that road to be like. And so, given that, wouldn't that be a discretionary action as opposed to a ministerial action? Please hold my time if I have any time.
Councilmember, the requirement for the construction of Pullman Avenue was a condition of the tract. So when we gave the approval to the project, we specified that Pullman Avenue would be constructed to standards acceptable to the city engineer. Those standards are established through actions with the planning, the general plan, and also the Department of Transportation based on the classification of the street. So Pullman Avenue, once it was specified to be constructed, we pull out our tables and charts and say, okay, it has to be this wide, it has to be at this maximum slope as specified in the track condition, and then we look at the plan and say, does it meet that, yes or no? If it does, great. If not, go back and fix it.
So when we issue B permits in other instances, in other developments, they're always ministerial.
That's correct.
They're always ministerial. Even though we tell them to do certain things in certain part of the road, put a light here, don't put a light there, have so much width here.
Those things are actually, whether or not the light's required, whether or not a storm drain or a sanitary sewer is required, those actions were taken at the time that the tract was reviewed, and those measures become mitigation measures for the additional load that project places on our infrastructure. Once that decision is made, that determination is made, then we use that basically as our checklist to see if they fulfilled the conditions of their approval.
Okay, thank you. And council members, I'll let others speak on this issue. I do want to ask our council president if we could, we have a number of people here, and I know we're already running behind schedule, but some people may wish to speak today, and if I could ask to open the public hearing for 10 minutes, say, so we could allow some of the people who are here to speak. And if I could end my comments by saying, I know we're in a disagreement, but I look at those hills and I look at the demand for those hills for many different purposes. And one thing that I'd like to see is us continue to find ways to protect them. And I see this as a gray area, although you're telling me it's more black and white. But in this case, I kind of have to go with my conscience and still suggest that we do a supplemental EIR, because the reason residents wanted more information is because there was a possible underground water table. I know you mentioned that was analyzed in the EIR in 90-something, that all those conditions were examined, but I do believe that a lot of time has passed. I do believe that a fresh look at this would allow us to view whether or not, in fact, the expansion of the original footprint would raise to the level of us having to look at the additional impacts this project is providing. But I have to go with my conscience and suggest that. But I won't make that motion now until we listen to more comment in the public, please.
Thank you. We have Mr. Weiss on the queue. Do you want to do the public hearing? Okay. We've got a number of cards. I'm just going to go through them. We're going to put the clock just at 1 minute, which is, I know, a brief time, but to try to get as many people as possible in those 10 minutes. And I will try to balance as much as people filled out cards on either for or against or public comment. Maria Mejia is the first speaker. After that will be Ben Resnick.
Good afternoon, honorable council members. Maria Mejia on behalf of the Mountains Recreation and Conservation Authority. Basically, what this amounts to is a different project. This project was not reviewed during the 1993 EIR. This is an expanded project. The amount of grading has increased approximately 600%. The number of lots that have been approved with this new project have expanded to 56 units, whereas in 1993 they were 18 units. The prior EIR did not analyze groundwater. It was recently discovered that groundwater exists on the project site. Based on these facts, the city has used its discretion in deciding to issue a B permit. This is not the same project that was reviewed in 1993. So we urge you to please require a subsequent or supplemental EIR. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ben Resnick is our next speaker.
Good afternoon, Ben Resnick, Jeffrey Mangels, Butler Marlboro, representing the applicant. What you have before you today, of course, is just a question of whether or not the project changed or there's supplemental EIR required. This project was approved by the city in 1993. Demands were made, including Pullman Road. Our client's not volunteering it. You, the city, insisted on it. Then you took action in 2004 and you adopted the map. You accepted the track map. We recorded it. Then in 2005, the department came back and said you need to realign Pullman, and the city initiated that. All of that was done with a full EIR. In the last 7 months since Mr. Weezar's motion, the purpose of the motion has now been served. The motion simply said, let's review and make sure that another EIR is not required. 4 departments have looked at it. 4 departments have written extensive memos, all saying no further EIRs are necessary. We are entitled to our permit as of last January. The initial motion by Mr. Weezar said the department should come back in 45 days. We should have had our permits last March. It's now the end of June. It's cost over $500,000 in delay. My client will have no choice but obviously to go to court to insist on his rights to develop this. We're ready to grade and we have permits ready to be issued. We ask you to simply receive and accept the report. There's no action required. Thank you.
Thank you. Aubrey White is our next speaker. After that, we will turn to Mr. McDonald.
Hi, I'm Aubrey White with the City Project, and on behalf of the City Project, Anahuac Youth Association, William C. Velasquez Institute, and Mujeres de la Tierra, we'd like to recommend a supplemental EIR on this project as well. The Los Angeles Times in an editorial recently emphasized that unfair disparities in land use planning in Northeast LA, including El Sereno and Glassell Park, according to the Times, it's necessary to protect the quality of life in Northeast Los Angeles by providing access to public parks and preserving ridgeline views, the same way that the Mulholland Pacific Plan and Brentwood Hills do on the west side. City Council District 14, where the proposed Elephant Hill Luxury Homes housing project is located, has only 2.12 total acres of parks per 1,000 residents, compared to 57.68 acres in City Council District 11. The population of City Council District 14 is disproportionately Latino and low income. Children of color living in poverty with no access to a car have the worst access to parks and school fields and suffer from highest levels of obesity in Los Angeles. A supplemental EIR we see is completely necessary in this project.
Thank you. I think you packed more words into a minute than I've ever heard. Good job. Is it Kevin McDonald?
Kevin McDonald.
Kevin McDonald.
Good afternoon, council members.
Good afternoon.
This is a simple question. The legal inquiry that was explained to you by the City Attorney's Office, I think the City Attorney's Office explanation is right on. It is a 2-part inquiry. Only after you reach the conclusion that you do have a pending discretionary approval do you go to the second prong. And even if you did in this case, the staff has reported repeatedly that the second prong would not be satisfied in this analysis either because of the fact that there are no substantial changes to the project. Quick comment on the NRDC letters addressing the code sections. There were 2 attempts by the NRDC to find some code support for their position that there was a discretionary approval pending. Their first attempt erred because it relied on the building code, which deals with private development, has absolutely nothing to do with B permits. They failed again in their most recent try in citing 62105B because, as the city attorney explained, their B permits are analyzed under 62105A. B deals with voluntary permits seeking the benefit of city inspections and approvals for something that may be dedicated in the future. It does not apply here.
Thank you. Elba Yanez, our next speaker.
Thank you. My name is Elva Yanez. I'm a resident of El Sereno. I want to thank the council member for his actions today. I urge the council to follow CD14's lead and evaluate the facts. You've heard some of the facts already, that this development was illegally expanded and there's underground water. That's new information that wasn't identified in the original EIR. Some other important facts for the council to keep in mind. In June 2004, the developer sued the city of South Pasadena to keep it silent on track 10. Track condition 10 that allowed this adjacent city to approve or disapprove the development. In July of 2004, the developer sued the city of LA to expedite approvals of numerous unmet conditions. As a result, the city attorney advised the council to approve the final track map. Just 2 council members, Councilmember Reyes and Villaraigosa, voted against the track map. Now the developer is threatening to sue again, to bully the city into sidestepping environmental review of this dangerous development. The fact is that the city gave the developers an inch and they took 9 more acres. Please don't give them another opportunity to take advantage of us.
Thank you. Paul Feilberg is next, and then Tim Grabiel.
Good afternoon. Paul Feilberg, Mesa Verde. I'm the applicant developer. I do want to say that the original EIR did cover every concern that was raised. It's been thoroughly reviewed by both the departments and staff and the city attorney. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Grabiel.
How you doing? My name is Tim Grabiel with the Natural Resource Defense Council, which has been mentioned a number of times. I had something prepared, but I'm just going to tear it up and just, try and put it simply. We could all cite the different code sections. We can all cite the various provisions. I and Jan Shannon Browns and Carsons, who co-signed the letter, adamantly think that it is discretionary. But I just want to put it out there plainly for this council right now. We have a B permit that's outstanding. A B permit to do improvements on a road that the public is going to use. It's outstanding. It has not been issued yet. It's a public right-of-way that the public will be traversing on a daily basis. And you're telling me that the city cannot put any conditions, does not exercise any judgment, has no discretion? The plain language of the section cited says, to the satisfaction of the city engineer, his acceptance of the improvement. The city engineer may impose such other conditions as may, in his discretion, be required. Nothing in this subsection shall be deemed to bind the city to accept such improvements. Period. I urge you to come out on the right side. Thank you.
Paul Edelman is our last speaker.
Hello, honorable members. Paul Edelman with the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. Member Weezar nailed it. There's a total disconnect between the proposed road and the final EIR. The final EIR did not consider that road, did not consider the 9 acres of additional grading and a 1,000-foot road. There's not even a neg deck for that. The key thing is this B permit. This B permit serves 60-plus lots, not 18 lots or the 24 lots considered in the final EIR. That's hugely growth-inducing. There's no possible worst-case piecemealing CEQA case before you. It's like dealing drugs in front of the police station. We urge you to be bold. We need a unified CEQA document, some kind of subsequent CEQA document. And with Ms. Mejia's letter and with the NRDC's letter, we've given you a great foundation to be bold. Thank you.
Thank you. That's our last speaker for the public comment cards. We'll return now to Mr. Weiss and then Mr. Labange. Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this was a very gruesome case in Plum, and I just want to let you know about that and let you know how admirable Mr. Weezar was in Plum that day and how strong and determined Mr. Reyes has been every step of the way on this particular matter. And what happened in Plum was we heard similarly impassioned statements such as what we've heard today, and then at the conclusion of the public comment period, we brought the attorneys back to the table and asked them what legal options we had as legislators before us. And so I'd like to turn to the attorneys again and ask you what legal options we have before us as legislators today. I can hold my tongue.
As legislators, if you have concerns about development in the hillsides, you are able to adopt ordinances that set standards for development of the hillsides that can limit development in the hillsides and it can address all these things. But that's as legislators. Here you have an issue with a permit that the City Council approved some time ago when they approved the track map. And the law says that only when you have another discretionary action on that matter do you have the authority to be able to require additional environmental review and then add additional conditions to it. You've heard staff talking about what the discretion is. They look to the standards. Once the city and the track map indicated that the street's going to go there, then when they issue their B permit, they make sure it's built properly according to the standards. That's not discretion within the meaning of CEQA, based on the way our codes are written. Now, you can change our codes to make all these types of decisions discretionary so that every time a B permit is issued that it could conceivably have an EIR attached to it and go to council, but that's not the way the codes are written right now, so you don't have that authority at this point. But those are all options for you to follow if you wish in the future. It won't change the impact on this property, but that is an option that you have for the future.
And Mr. Reyes is going to initiate legislation along conceptually related to what you just said, and there will be policy pros and cons that will come out and will be addressed if and when that motion process gets initiated, or Friday. My question to you is, with respect to the matter of initiating an EIR on the basis of this B permit issue, what can you tell us about that?
We advised previously, and we stand by that advice, that the B permit is not discretionary. As best we can tell from reading the codes, talking to the department about how it's implemented, looking at our CEQA thresholds, it states it is not discretionary. If that is the case, then there's no jurisdiction to require an additional environmental review.
And so what can happen if we nonetheless issue such an order?
Well, if you could be sued, and then the court would decide that ultimate issue. And if the court decided against us, there would be some liability, potentially. Or if you don't, we could be sued as well. Be sued either way.
I get that. But it tends to be worse off when you take an action that is directly contrary to the advice of your counsel, which has been stated in public session on multiple occasions and pretty directly. That's a question.
That's a question?
Yeah.
We give our best advice at the time. Whether the courts give credence to it is something else.
I wanted to make it very clear, we asked a lot of questions at Plum to try to find a way on this one, because I think everyone on this council wants to find a way on this one. Regretfully, our council have not indicated to us that there is such a way. That's the explanation for why I voted the way I did at Plum, and I just wanted to make sure that that was clear to the council.
Thank you, Mr. LeBon. Our next speaker.
Hello, Mr. President. Hi.
Hello, Mr. LeBon.
Councilor Fan. Let me just ask a question there. They went from the blue to the expanded there. The representative spoke so fast. I don't know if you could come back up here if I had any questions. You spoke so fast, Mr. Resnick. I didn't understand what you were saying. But there's a blue line and then there's a red line, right? And there's an existing approval for a blue line area. Is that correct?
Correct, sir.
And this is expanding to the red line?
The red line includes areas that were off-site improvements required as conditions of approval for the actual blue line. So the work being done off-site are conditions of approval to stabilize the hill below the subdivision, but they do not have the right to build on that even though they own it.
So there'll be no building in the area between the blue line and the red line?
The area in the blue line would be subject to the current ICO that's in place. So it will it be open space or will it be built on? Well, it's privately owned. The developer bought those parcels in order to be able to put in the slope easement that was required of him. If he wished to build on them, he would have to come in under the provisions of the interim control ordinance,
which would make that
And
discretionary.
they let their intentions be known on this? Do we know that, Mr. Counselor, for the applicant, Mr. Resnick? Do you plan to build in that area as well?
I'm sorry.
Do you plan to build in the area that
The
you
slope,
have?
the slope that is being built is to support a street.
So you're not going to ever build in that area?
You can't build on the slope, but there's...
No, you're not going to ever build in that area?
I can't see what area we're looking at.
Well, see
I've
the
not
blue
seen
line,
these.
red line, I'm sorry, let's turn them around. Mr. Miller, I hate to ask you if you're standing right there, please.
Downslope portion of Pueblo.
Yeah, we can't build on that down slope. That's
So
the
there'll
slope
be
to
no
support the
buildings,
street.
the only area that you're going to build is where it's yellow. No
That's
other
the
area.
only track that was approved before you. If anyone goes beyond, anything beyond the yellow, they have to come back in here for another subdivision and approval under the interim control
I understand that,
ordinance.
but here's the question I want to ask you. If you say, you know what, we want to build those homes because we want to build homes, and but we're not going to build in that area, we're going to leave it open and deed it that way, that makes a little bit of a concession to me, because all of a sudden, and I don't want to say it's an attack, but we have the last lot, empty lot in Los Angeles soon to be written. They're building across from our home in Silver Lake, legal, it's one house, fine, okay, we're dealing. Every lot's going to be built on in Los Angeles. That's the reality. But how is it done is the challenge. And if you could say, okay, part of this is going to be open, the other part, I think he's trying to figure that out right there, and maybe we could have some, no one likes it, but there is an opportunity to try to find a concession that makes it, because the city attorney says that we're in a bind here. Is that correct?
I'm sorry.
We're in a bind here. If we don't approve this, then you feel we're in soft ground. Mr. Resnick, I wasn't through. I want to know if you're going to say you're not going to build in that area. You know,
The area shown in brown, I guess, down there.
Well, let me go point it out. Do we have a hand mic?
Is subject to potential development, but it can't be built on without going through another. Right.
Okay.
And that's what's before you.
Here, pardon me.
Right.
But that be left as open space. Do you have an intent to build it?
In that area, there is an intent to build at some point.
Oh, at some point?
Yeah.
See, then okay.
But that's not what's before us today.
Okay, I got it. I just want to hear there is an intent to build everywhere. And the challenge that we have is, as a council, and I think of Marvin Browdy, God rest his soul. I think of Sidney Misakowski, who used to sit right next to me, who read everything that ever went across the desk. And then we never figured something out that tries to deal with this issue, because all of a sudden you have these roadways and all of a sudden lead to it. That is an impact. If we were building a city street to reach a public facility, would we have to do an EIR? Mr. City Attorney, could you help, or Madam City Attorney?
If you were deciding to build a city street independent of this,
Yes.
in other words, if the city council is deciding, well, we want to put a street somewhere,
Because let's say there's a safe route to school.
for whatever
potentially.
reason that you want to, your decision to do that would be a discretionary action. That would be subject to CEQA, and then therefore there would have to be some form of environmental review for that. Whether it be an EIR would depend on whether there would be impacts. But that's if the city council decides to put in a street independent of any other action.
Right, but does it, the other thing this has, see, one of the other things too, in the last lots in Los Angeles, the next chapter, what happens in this impact here, and I still can't see the representative, they're still there on this, how much destruction, naturally, not caused by intention, by earth-moving equipment, tractors, trucks, lumber trucks, cement mixers, impacts all the other streets that has an environmental impact, and then they feel real bad. I'm expressing views of people who feel that the world's, and I should say the world's coming to an end, because it's not as serious as that, but the change in the neighborhood is coming because of these impacts of the building. Do you understand what commitment, and maybe the engineer could answer the question, what commitment is to protect the city's interest on the existing street system that is there? Are they going to be required to take care of anything? And I know you can run my clock faster if you want.
I put you on for a second one. There's nobody else that's in the queue, but
Got it.
I assume you'd press your button a second time.
How do we protect the city's interest on the roadways?
One of the things that we do is if the contractor is carrying equipment in and out of the project, we go ahead and videotape the state of the streets, verify its condition, and then after their construction is done, if we see damage that's been caused by the contractor or the developer, we require them to go back and make
How
those
many
repairs.
have we required them to fix in your time? And I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you to introduce yourself.
I'm Greg Vandergrift
Yes,
with
Greg,
Central
how are you?
District.
Right.
We've had, I can think of about 4 projects where we've had to have
Yeah.
people go back and make
That's
repairs.
not a whole lot.
No, it's
And
not
I
a
can tell you
lot.
there's more potholes out there than 4, because of that. But anyway, I think I've made my point. Maybe we get some help from the discussion, and maybe the counselors could come up with an idea. Would you like to do an EIR, a voluntary EIR?
No, but I do want to let you know, Councilman, all the issues you just raised within the red area, that's the full 110 acres, were fully analyzed in the EIR back in the 90s when it was done, and everything you raised, including the slope stability, what would happen off-site, off the track with the grading, was all in that EIR, which was certified by the council.
1990?
1993, and then in 2004, you voted to approve this track with a certified EIR. So you've taken actions leading this developer to go forward, but everything within the red has been analyzed in that EIR, and your staff reports, which have come in the last 6 months, have all confirmed that.
Very well. Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you. Any other members wishing to be heard on this item? Mr. Wisa.
Thank you. Mr. President, I believe there's nothing on the table since the item came to us as a report from Plum with no action. Is that accurate?
That's correct. We just have before us right now the further EIR would be required.
Well, there's no recommendation from Plum.
No, they came without recommendation.
Okay. One final question. I mentioned there was a two-pronged process. One is whether there's a required discretionary approval or not. The other is whether the expanded grading area, the additional lots, and other issues, would that reach the threshold of a supplementary EIR? I'm trying to understand that because if let's say we do have a discretionary approval. The second test is, has there been significant new information or changes to the project? Can you go through that analysis for us, please?
Yes, Hadar Plofkin, LA City Planning Environmental Section. It's our contention that the off-site improvements that are required by the original EIR, that since they were required by the original EIR, they're part of that analysis. It's not really considered new information. It was known that at the time the EIR was done, that Pueblo Avenue would need to be improved and the slope below it stabilized in order to be able to build the subdivision above it.
And was that analyzed in the original EIR?
Yes, it was.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, we closed the public comment. If somebody directs questions to you, you may, but otherwise, no.
Speak again?
Okay. All right. Any other questions, Mr. Wisa?
Mr. Labange has a question, then I'll make a motion.
Okay. Mr. Labange?
Quick question, Madam City Attorney, because if the 1993 EIR, is there a statute of limitations on EIRs?
Yes, the longest period of time that there is to challenge an EIR is 6 months from whenever the approval occurs.
No, but I mean, if I get one in 1993, an EIR, that's like 14 years ago. That's 14 years is
way past the statute of limitations. 13 and a half
not
years.
to challenge it, but how long is it good for?
It depends on how much factually has changed. As a general rule, when an EIR is that long ago, you can assume things have changed, and you would look at them again to see if, in fact, they have.
So,
But
Mr.
there's no
Planning
rule.
Officer has looked at it and says this 14-year-old document is still good.
Well, keep in mind, it's from the time the EIR was done to the time the track was approved, which was actually within 1 year.
I want to hear you say good. See, this is the question I want to ask. I tried the same thing from the counselor, and now I'm asking you, is it a good EIR? Could you stand up there? Could you go to what's the neighborhood school in that area? Could you go to that neighborhood school to the meeting and tell the people there that this is a good EIR? Could you put your name as a certified city planner, and forgive me, your full name?
Hadar Plofkin.
Hi, Hadar. I'm sorry we haven't had a chance to meet, but could you get up there and say this is a certified document and up to date?
It's not an example I would bring to a school, but It is a certified EIR, and it was never challenged at the time it was done. And the approvals were done almost immediately, immediately after. If it were to come before you today, if you were to come with no approvals at all, you might ask for additional information. But because it's a recorded tract, it makes it very, very difficult under the Subdivision Map Act to say you now have to go back 13, 14 years.
Yeah, I just see, I'm going back in my mind at Garbutt Hathaway, which is up across the 13th, when they transform that. It is a transformation for a neighborhood to go through these experiences. That's why I like full EIR, even though some people don't like to do full EIR because they feel it impedes them from reaching their goal. Their goal is admirable, to build housing, but at the same time, these people live in the neighborhood, and that's why we try to have the planning department protect people as best as possible under the advice of the city attorney. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. LaBonge. And back to Mr. Huizar.
Thank you, Mr. President. This was a very difficult and arduous process. Again, I want to thank the Planning Department, the City Attorney's Office. A lot of time and energy has been spent on this. We postponed this a number of times in Plum, in Plum. And at this time, I'd like to make a motion that we, I don't know the correct language, but that we instruct, that we require a supplemental environmental impact report on this project.
Okay. The motion is before us. Is there a second?
Seconded.
There is a second. So that is before us. We have nobody else in the speaker queue. Just to be clear, folks, there's no recommendation we're voting on out of Plum. The only thing we're voting on is the motion that has now been moved by Mr. Huizar to instruct that there be a supplemental the language does not say supplemental here, but Mr. Huizar, you want supplemental EIR? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Weiss?
Which motion would be voted upon first? Mine or Mr. Huizar?
Motions go in reverse order. So the last one comes first.
Well, I would make a motion then to follow the recommendation of the city attorney here, which is...
Can we have that specifically from the city attorney one more time so folks know what they're voting on?
There's one motion on the floor now that we already seconded, though. So let's vote on that motion, and then if not, we vote on your motion.
But I think it would be better to do it this way. And then,
procedurally?
Yeah, I think it would be better.
You'll vote on his motion after you vote on your motion.
The way we would do it, folks, is in reverse order. After we have clarified what the motion is, if there's a second,
that's fine. I'll withdraw that.
Okay.
I mean, that would be my...
Mr. Weiss withdraws. So we have just that motion. This requires
I'm just trying to do it
8 votes. A yes vote is to instruct for the EIR. A no vote is to not. Is that clear? Any other questions procedurally, Mr. Zine?
I have one technical. The EIR that was approved, what year was that done?
It was completed in 1992.
Okay, that's all I need. Thank you.
President.
Thank you.
And the approval was 93.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think
Is it a technical question?
How long are EIRs valid legally?
Legally, there's no rule on how long they're valid. If someone wants to challenge them as not being good enough, they have to do it within 6 months. Or they're then...
The EIRs are good forever.
Once they're certified, they're done. There's no opening it up again unless there is a new discretionary action.
Okay.
Okay. Everybody clear what they're voting on? There's no further questions. Please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
8 ayes, 2 noes.
That is approved.
Okay.
That carries. Okay. Did everybody vote the way they intended to?
Yeah.
Okay. That is approved. We'll next go into...
Let the lawsuits begin.
We'll next go into closed session.
For everybody's benefit?
Yes. Mr. LaBonge?
Can you clarify what just happened, Mr. President?
There's an instruction to do we'll have to look at what happens next, but the council voted to instruct a supplemental EIR on this project. Okay? And I will send that forward. All right. Next items, I believe we're going to go into closed session in accordance with California state law. Mr. City Attorney?
Thank you. Item number 55, just have to make an agenda correction. City Council will be conferring with its labor negotiator, the CAO.
Okay, we'll go into closed session in accordance with California state law. If I can ask folks to please clear the chambers.